Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Algonquin Highlands is located on Treaty 20 Mishi-Saugig territory and in the traditional territory of the Mishi-Saugig and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. We also acknowledge a historical shared presence of other Indigenous nations throughout the area. We recognize these original Indigenous inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda for today? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved that the January 19th, 2023 council meeting agenda be approved as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof today? Councillor Barry?
I'm declaring pecuniary interest for item 13 as I am a participant in the event.
Thank you. I just before we get into our agenda, would like to acknowledge the unfortunate closure of Robinson's store in Dorset. We recognize that there's a pretty serious economic impact, as well as an overall impact on the local residents, and we just hope that that can be resolved as soon as possible. Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes of the regular meeting of December the 12th and the regular meeting of December the 8th and the special meeting of December the 12th. Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved that the December 8th, 2022 regular council meeting minutes and the December 13th, 2022 special meeting minutes be approved as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. And could I have a mover and a seconder to go into closed session, please? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved that the open meeting of council adjourns at 9:02 a.m. to proceed into closed session for the purpose of discussing the following: litigation or potential litigation and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for the purpose in accordance with section 239(2)(e) and F of the Municipal Act 2001 SO 2001 as amended, regarding potential legal action against the township, and personal matters about identifiable individual in accordance with section 239(2)(b) of the Municipal Act 2001 SO 2001 as amended, discussion on candidates for appointment to committees of council.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder to come out of the closed session? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Dayu. And welcome back to the open session. Next on the agenda is I'm sorry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved that closed session meeting adjourn at 10:17 a.m. and open session resume.
All in favor? It's carried. Next on the agenda is building and bylaw enforcement. Unfortunately, Greg Moore is away. So I would ask if, do council have any questions or comment on the report? I've got to say, I was a little bit surprised to see that our overall numbers at the year end were down. I would have thought they would have been up, but anyway, lots of construction, lots of things happening. So could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the building and bylaw report? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Counselor Short Reed, second by Counselor Richards, be it resolved that council receives report BLDG 1622 regarding monthly activities submitted by Greg Moore and dated January 19th, 2023.
All in favor? It's carried. All right, next up, Parks, Recreation and Trails. Good morning, Mr. Card. So first is your rousing report on Stanhope Tennis Court.
Yes, thank you. So just to recap, last year I've been looking at, we've known for a little bit of time that we were going to have to do a resurfacing on the tennis court, which is next door here. Last year, and looking at that project, as well as when we were doing our asset management planning, we had anticipated a resurfacing of the court. We budgeted to do that in 2022 and had a tender out last spring for that work. We didn't receive any bids on that tender, and I brought that information to council back in July. Some of the companies who I had reached out to explained after I released that tender that they felt that it was beyond a resurfacing at this point. It's more of a reconstruction. So following that, I reached out to some more companies and spent most of last year trying to get some companies to come out and have a look at the courts and give me some ideas of what the possibilities are. It was challenging. A number of companies similar to anything after COVID or have a backlog of projects. So they're catching up on them, and some of them are booked out a couple of years in advance. So just getting companies to have a look was quite a challenge, but I had two interested in giving us a quote, which actually happened very recently, and both of which are able to provide services this year if we want to go ahead. However, it is for a reconstruction essentially of the court rather than a resurfacing. And it is at a higher cost than what we anticipated. We were planning in our asset management plan and our budget last year $50,000 for the resurfacing. The two quotes that I've gotten, the first being $206,400, the second being $139 and change. Each are for a full reconstruction. So tearing out, they'd be taking the fence out and then reinstalling the fence. We're not having to rebuild the fence, we're keeping that, but essentially the base of the court itself would be coming out, and then redoing the underlay and then rebuilding it from there. I've given information on their warranty as well as their processes. Essentially, the two different companies have similar processes. The difference in the company that I'm recommending here, which is the court surface specialists, is that they supply a option for a what they call a high strength fiberglass membrane overlay, which is within the asphalt and adds protection for movement and heaving and cracking over a typical process, which is what the other company is offering. That company offers a 5-year warranty and would do any sort of repairs within that warranty period. The other company is offering a 2-year warranty, essentially on defective or faulty workmanship. So at this time, I'm looking for thoughts from council, and if we'd like to go ahead, getting this contract finalized so that we could get on the schedule with them for this year and actually have it happen probably around June or July, if that's possible.
Too bad it couldn't be just a little bit earlier than that. But it does sound like the process that they're recommending would give the court a lot more durability and longevity.
Yeah, I asked them the question of what the expectation is for longevity. And of course, it's, relative to weather and those types of things over time. But they say typically they're seeing 20+ years out of their courts before a resurfacing is required. I had them give me some costs on what a resurfacing is valued at now, so I can extrapolate that for that time and look into the future and plan that for that time.
Well, I mean, obviously, we need to, it's obvious that this is a lot more expensive than we had initially anticipated. Unfortunately, if we leave it, it'll be even more expensive down the road. And this is a facility that gets a lot of use. I'm just wondering where we stand with reserves and what we could utilize out of reserves to help minimize the impact on the budget.
I did have a chat with the treasurer on this report, and there's essentially a number of possibilities. And the simple answer is that there are reserves available, and there'd be various options on which reserves could be used. Recreation infrastructure related reserves could be used. It would drain the majority of them. Those are earmarked currently for replacement projects for future, for playgrounds, that type of infrastructure. So we'd have to rebuild those over time, but those projects are 10, 15 years out at this point. We're in good shape. We've, as you know, we've been able to replace our playgrounds recently. And then other possibilities are various reserves that the township has that could be reviewed at budget time, but also with where things end up at the end of the year and how much the project actually ends up being. So the treasurer's recommendation essentially was that we look at all of the reserve possibilities at budget time, make decisions relative to where other things lie. We may end up in a position of levying some of it or deciding to have the final decision at the end of the year on the total project cost.
Thoughts, questions, Councillor Barry?
My question is, I agree with the mayor that it would be nice to see it happen before the season starts for the court use. My question would be, how long a program, like a process is it? Would it be a 2-week? Would it be a 1 week? Just wondering how long would not how long would it take, but how long would the whole courtyard be down?
It is more lengthy than you would imagine. It's something that took me by surprise, but it's due to the curing time required for the surface. And it is going to be down for a period of time. It could be up to 5 weeks. There are options that they offered that they could paint temporary lines on the surface, which is on top of the curing asphalt before they put the final surfacing on top, which is the acrylic with the paint and the lines, etc., that would allow it to be played on. But the fence would be down. So to do that, I'd have to, I'm thinking probably rent some temporary fencing or netting to put around it, but that's possible. But there are going to be times that it's just simply not available.
But if we don't do the work, it's not going, it won't be available at all.
And sorry, the timelines were the same for each company that I was looking at. It's pretty standard kind of timeline.
Deputy Mayor Dayu?
To that point specifically and exclusively, would there be scope for agreeing a contract now for the following spring? Could the court withstand another season? And then if we could get in the lineup for April of the following year?
But the price would change dramatically.
Well, I'm throwing that out there. Could we lock in a price? I mean, I don't know how these things work. Look at the staff.
I'm betting not. Any comment, Chris?
I think you're right. Our experience is that costs are increasing year over year. I'm sure it's a possibility that could be discussed with the company. My concern right now is I did really hope to get it done last year, is we have pieces of the court that are starting to delaminate, kind of lift up. And
we're hearing concerns from.
Yeah, we've been doing
users.
patching for several years, which isn't uncommon for a court of that age to do crack patching and repairs. But at the end of 2021, we actually started to have some delamination. So parts of the court actually kind of peeling back like that.
You know, the cost that we're finding out that it's going to be, I think is a shocker. I still have this, sort of general belief that to defer, infrastructure types of projects just end up causing you more money down the road, that to defer a project that really needs to be done is probably not the best approach, but Councillor Barry?
I wonder if to meet in the middle, to have this year's cost, could the project be done in fall? Could we book to have it done in October, November before the frost sets in? So that there's no disruption with the rec use for this summer? Spring, summer.
Did any of your discussions about timing and scheduling the project look at that?
I haven't discussed fall possibilities. We were talking about, in our initial discussions, actually, they said potentially May, but in the timeline from then to this report, they're now booking into June and July.
So the longer we wait, the more difficult it is to pin them down.
But that being said, I couldn't, I could certainly have the conversation with them about a fall project.
But that doesn't, that doesn't alleviate the cost. Or, whether we do the project this year or not, it's just, keeping the court open. Thoughts on that idea? Councillor Shortreed?
I'm fine as long as the safety issues are okay throughout the summer. If it's lifting, you don't want people tripping and getting hurt, so. I guess it just depends on where the court is for the summer, if people can use it safely or not.
Well, that's a response that for Chris to give us. I mean,
And
you're obviously, it's your best guess about.
It is unfortunate that it would be in a time that is generally high use. But I'd like to get it done as soon as possible. There are safety concerns, absolutely. And the extent of those and how they progress throughout the summer would be impossible to know until it actually happens. We are in a position that I can give advance notice to the players, and they may be able to look at alternate arrangements. I can certainly go the route of the temporary lines and the temporary fencing. I am suggesting a contingency amount, which could be used to add some temporary fencing. So they would probably be a tear out, a lay down, and then that several week curing period, it could actually be played on. So they'd only lose it for, I'm just estimating, but let's say a week.
Overall, I suspect that, that even though there would be disappointment in it, that there's a few weeks that they won't be able to use the court, that they're going to be ecstatic about the fact that there's going to be a new surface. Councillor Richards.
Yeah, I'm hesitant on it because we don't have the budget yet, but I like the conversation going towards some possible uses in reserves. And I think too, with obviously we're not going to get the Dorset Rec Center reopened before then anyway, so to provide whatever service we can recreationally, I think is important right now.
I have to agree that when it comes to approving fairly big ticket items before we actually get into the budget does make me a little bit nervous. I don't like, as a matter of course, I don't like to do that, but there's always really good rationale behind doing it when we do. I think it's important that we go forward with the project and as soon as possible. That's just my thought. You've got a comment? So we have a resolution, I think, that suggests that we go forward with the project, acknowledging that we do have some flexibility when it comes to reserves and use of reserves when it comes to budget time discussion. Sound reasonable? Can I have a mover and a seconder then? Councillor Shortreed and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, Council receives report PRT 123 regarding Stanhope Tennis Court quotation results submitted by Chris Card and dated January 19th, 2023. And the council approves a Stanhope Court reconstruction cost of $206,400 with contingency of $41,280 plus taxes. And finally, the council directs staff to finalize an agreement with court surface specialists for a 2023 project completion.
All in favor? That's carried. All right, next item for discussion is the request for assistance at the Raven Lake Landing and parking lot. You've got some comments to make?
I can certainly give the overview, and then Angie, do you want to do you have any recommendations from there, or?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's whatever council would like. I can certainly jump in, yes.
Well, if you want to give a little bit of the history, and then I'll make a couple of comments and then we can open up for discussion.
Okay, sure. So we received some correspondence from the Raven Lake Cottagers Association relative to a report that was received by the Lake of Bays Council at their last meeting on the 10th, which was about winter maintenance and just general maintenance of the parking lot at the Raven Lake Landing access point. That access point is on Crown land. Lake of Bays has plowed and maintained the parking lot for a number of years, and then under a shared services agreement, we maintain the docks and the boat launch and the retaining wall there. Council will recall last year we replaced the docks there, and in 2016 we replaced the retaining wall. Our shared services agreement for that spot is still in place with Lake of Bays, with the agreement being that 50% of capital costs is covered by them. We manage the projects and the maintenance associated with the docks and the boat launch. At their meeting on the 10th, they decided to cease any sort of maintenance operations at that location. They have agreed to continue doing the maintenance until April. The Cottagers Association is looking for both a point of contact with the municipality, as well as hopes of support for looking at some sort of shared approach in managing that space going forward. We have our water trails access point there, as well as the docking.
It's an unfortunate situation that we all find ourselves in. There's no doubt about it, and it obviously is a sign that we need to have some, fairly soon, some more discussion about our shared services agreement and how we're going to manage that. I would like to see us offer some support to this. Obviously, there's a level of responsibility that we have given the percentage of Algonquin Highlands residents that are using the area, and from the simple fact of availability to emergency services, we want to make sure that those people are served well, as well as they can be given their circumstances. My first thought would be that we offer to support them in their approaching M&R for a land use permit. That I think, and see what level of success we have with that, similar to the Bear Lake Road discussions, that if we can help them, with our support to get a land use permit, and they can look after the landing themselves. If, we may need to enter into negotiations down the road, but I think that might be a good starting point. But I would look for comments or thoughts from council. Deputy Mayor Dayu?
I agree for a couple of different reasons. One, I certainly want to see the ball start to bounce towards a solution. And this is a very practical thing that we can do right away to support. But also because we do have a much bigger conversation about parking, which we have said we'd like to have in this upcoming year. And this is yet one more example of the complications of parking and the land use permits and should it be pay to play? I mean, we've got so much parking questions out there that I could see your short-term solution as being something that allows us to get the ball rolling, and then hopefully we can bring the larger parking land use permit conversation back sooner rather than later, so that we can start to parse out solutions to, to the Hawk Lakes, to Raven, to the degree that we're able to as a result of those conversations.
We do definitely decide on the direction we want to take the process. So yeah, the sooner we can have that conversation, the better. But, staff have to have time to prepare a report, bring some options that, lay the groundwork for our discussion. The thoughts, comments, Councillor Berry, then Councillor Richards.
Yeah, I support the initial step of getting the ball rolling with the MNRF. It is asking as a request that there be a point person. Would that be something that we would put Chris?
Well, I would think that it would be Chris and Angie, if it escalates it beyond Chris's scope. Okay, Councillor Richards.
I really only to say that, I think we should support them as much as possible. And I totally agree that this is a great first step in moving towards a solution that they can have there.
So I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just want to add, in supporting the association to apply for the land use permit for the maintenance of that area, keeping in mind that we maintain the launch and those pieces of infrastructure, we should also request M&R to ensure continued access, transient access. So the land use permit can't just be for Raven Lake residents.
It has to
It has to
offer us
be a
access.
public access as well. So they would maintain the parking lot in that area, but that the public continue to be able to traverse it so that they can use the launch.
Okay, so can we word the resolution to include that? You're ready to read the resolution? Okay, so could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Short, Reed and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Short, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved that council receives correspondence from Sean Hungerford regarding the Raven Lake parking lot. And the council supports the Raven Lake Cottagers Association and the Raven Lake Dock Association in applying for a land use permit with the MNRF in order for the associations to maintain the Raven Lake parking lot with the provision that public access is maintained.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the environmental business, and we welcome Melissa. So first up is your environmental services activity report.
Thank you.
So I'll just a couple of points that I can sort of bring to your attention in my report here. As you've heard many times, continuing meetings as far as the Blue Black transition are going on, and taken a bit of a pause over the holidays, but hoping to get back to some of those meetings in the next week or so. We have had approval of our proposed non-eligible source deduction. So the Blue Box program is only targeted towards residents and residential materials, not commercial, industrial, institutional. So initially, Circular Materials had proposed a 25% deduction, that 25% of our materials could be accounted for as not being residential, as falling into those non-eligible sources. We strongly protested that was much too high. And so they have accepted a proposal and a couple of options for reevaluating that percentage. And we've agreed to use impact data and residential versus commercial numbers in there. And that brings our percentage down to about 2.13%. So
Well done.
yeah, that's been a good win on that front. Obviously, I mean, given we have very little commercial base to our community, the 25% was quite
Out of line.
out of line for that. And the same with all the communities in Halliburton. We've all looked at reassessing that and all coming down to those sorts of numbers. So that's a good, like I say, a good win on and it's been a difficult fight. In their continuous improvement fund meetings, and you may hear in the wind coming up, is that the wrap up plan for the continuous improvement fund has been approved by RIPRA with a condition, and that is that there has to be an opt-out clause. So the plan was that AMO and LAS would take over management of the work that the CIF had been doing. So that work would continue on. And so that plan was approved, like I said, with this condition that communities could choose to opt out and not and basically take the contributions to the fund out. So all the member communities have funded this program for many years, and there's some funding left over for the last few years of it. So this would be basically they could take their money out and opt out of the work that's being done there. AMO is not in support of that, but it does need to be approved by their board of directors. So that is coming up. That will be brought to the AMO board for them to decide whether they want to accept the condition on the wind-up plan or not. So you just may hear some wind of that. It would not be in our favor, in the Township of Algonquin Highlands' favor, to have the program cease or to have the opt-out. We would not benefit from the opt-out option to the degree that we do of being a participant in that. We get a lot of benefit from working with them.
So is it an all in or all out when it comes to each individual municipality can't decide on their own what they want to do?
Yes, so that is what RIPRA had required. AMO, there's, their board will probably set a line where, if so many communities opt out, it just won't be worthwhile anymore. So they haven't had that discussion yet. So where that is, but the word on the discussion is that at some point it won't make it worthwhile. So the opt-out, like I say, would be a hard hit, particularly to smaller communities who really benefit from the combined resources that CIF has brought together, especially during the transition program, and they have done some great work and facilitated some really good research and background information, that sort of thing that we could potentially lose out on. So it's just a bit of a concern that's out there, and something we'll be watching,
hearing more about.
I know, like I say, because AMO will be having further discussion about it. We see some of that in their newsletters and information. So. Just a quick note to our fees. Obviously, our fees update schedule was approved back in December, so we have updated the tipping fees for everywhere. I just wanted to make note that the signage, the actual gate signage, We're still waiting on just getting those new signs. So if you do hear anybody saying that the signage doesn't match, it's just a bit of a delay in getting those signs actually produced. So that should be taken care of shortly. All of the digital versions are all up to date.
Okay.
And just, I know we've had some discussion in the past in regards to our vehicle counts at sites. And I just, the year end, sort of our December report is the final, is to take a look at what our year end numbers and where that's at. So, we're not back to where we were in 2018. Our numbers are down a bit.
I was actually surprised. I had anticipated that the numbers would be up, but
It's and I would ask council if they're interested. I'm not sure what how much of a deep dive you'd like to take a look at those numbers. It's not easily explainable. There's some sort of oddities in how that where those changes are occurring. It's not all in the summer. I know Councillor Richards had mentioned that some people from Hawk weren't transitioning and over to using services at Maple or Pine Springs, and but the numbers there don't fully account for that. We and the seasonality of it is unusual as well. We've had significant decreases in May and significant increases in January. So doesn't
jive.
No, it doesn't. So it's a little, and just I just did a quick just looking at particular the Hawk numbers. So from 2018 to 2022, I took 2018 as sort of a base year, the sort of pre-COVID, pre-discussion of closures, like going back to sort of our usual operations, to what increases in traffic at Maple have been. So there's a difference of about over a year, about 2,000 vehicles. So it's not as significant considering there's about 11,000 vehicles per year was the traffic at Hawk. So it's only a percentage of that's really fallen into there. So I could say if council's interested, I can certainly pull some more numbers there. I won't have any, specific answers as to what might be going on, but if you are interested, please let me know, and I could certainly bring that forward. I just want to make note of we had a bit of shutdown, obviously due to weather over during the Christmas storm there, and I just wanted to sort of pass along that the site attendants and the contractor were so appreciative of having that time to manage their staff. We're dealing with some challenges as well, so just having that chance to sort things out, and they were so complimentary of the township staff and public works for the work that they did to get sites ready, and they were in great shape when they got back in there.
Well, that's good to hear.
And I had been at the site. I had been at the Dorset transfer station on January 2nd, investigating some issues we'd had there with our compactor and solar system. And so I had a chance to chat with residents who were coming in that day. And I would say everybody who I spoke to was very understanding of the closure and sort of what we were dealing with. So that was just nice to hear some positive feedback from them.
Any questions on the environmental services report and on the thought of whether we need to do a deeper dive into, the numbers and the shift in numbers? Councillor Barry.
My comment is just a question in your background. It says that you had discussion single tier waste management and service delivery review. I just wondered if there's an update in regards to the discussion.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
The RFP has been reposted and closing is February 2nd. So after February 2nd, the evaluation committee, which is representatives from each of the townships and the county, will get together and review that and make a recommendation, looking at making that recommendation March 24th, I think is the council meeting, the county council meeting that's scheduled to come forward.
And county council is, in the midst of their budget discussions, and it really is hard to predict what direction they might take, and, what they might say, look, we want to hold off on that, or we want to continue with that. I really have no sense yet of, where they're going to want to, dig down and make decisions about reductions. Go ahead.
I am always in favor, where feasible, to do a deeper dive into data. I think it helps us to be more responsive to the folks that we're serving. The change between Hawk to Maple, I hear it doesn't account for the whole difference, but there are some interesting and disturbing numbers there that you've raised about how many people have transferred over. And I think we should sort of think about that a little bit more, all in the spirit of wanting to continue to be as responsive as we can to the folks that we're serving. And having said that, I look at the numbers 2018 to now, and I'm reminded of the building permit applications, and those numbers over the same period, they're like, and to a certain degree, moving ahead into the decade that comes, I think we're going to have to treat this period of time as a real blip on the data collection framework, and say it'll be hard to do any year-on-year analysis through the period of pre, during, and post-COVID. And yet I'd still kind of like the deeper dive.
But could you be a little bit more specific about what it is you're looking for in that deeper dive?
Sure. I wonder if we even have the data, because we very well might not, but if we have the data that would help us to understand the drop as a function of our services or the restoration to normalcy from pre-COVID days. Is there something that we should be learning from the 16.6% drop that would inform our decision-making? Or is it just a reflection on returning to some form of normal where folks just aren't at the cottage as often as they were before? Because if they're, sort of repeating what I said before, if there is something that we could be learning to improve or, adjust our service delivery, then we should be hearing it.
Councillor Richards?
Yeah, I think, I do agree that anytime we have the opportunity to review numbers, it's a good thing because we can learn something from it. I'm just not entirely sure that data on vehicular traffic is going to give us that. I know even myself, going from being a Hawk Lake dump trafficker to now going to Maple, because of the further distance away, I'm going less frequently.
Taking more at
Taking more at a time, but less frequent trips because of the distance and the time. So I think that's definitely a big factor in it. As well as, I don't think obviously the whole of the Hawk Lakes area is sticking their heels in and taking it to other municipalities where they have another residence, because a lot of them, this is their only residence. So I really don't feel like we can get a handle on usage from the vehicular traffic. It would be good to see things pertaining to the amount of waste that is going in versus vehicular traffic, because that'll help us to better understand our residents' needs. I'm wondering if things like the food cycler program have had an impact, if more people are just being diligent and composting more, and so having less, waste, the lack of renos, the lack of time and just cleaning out your property. You had all this extra time at the property to clean out your cottage that hadn't been cleaned out in 60 years, and now you don't need it anymore. There's I think a huge amount of variables here. But I do agree that anything that we can do to better understand what is going on is always a good thing.
Councillor Barry. You of all of us have the best idea about how you might go about giving us different or more detailed information. And I'm thinking maybe if we want to give you a little bit of time to think about what you might be able to offer us and come back to us with some thoughts on that might be the best approach. Go ahead.
I think Angie.
Did you have a comment, Andy?
I just want to ask around timing on this request, because of course, you know, staff are all in the middle of budget at the moment. So is there a thought around timing, just to give Melissa an idea?
No, you know, I don't think anybody's expecting her to come back at the next meeting or even the meeting after that. But, you know, if you can work that into your schedule over the next couple of months, put some thought to it and come back with some ideas, to me, that's reasonable. Deputy Mayor Dayu?
And a thought for the pot, really, would be, we've been thinking through how to use the Let's Connect Bang the Table platform, how to engage with the community, how to get information from the community. This may be an interesting topic for exploration using a platform like that. Just throwing that out there in case it's a good idea.
Melissa?
If I may, thank you.
Yeah.
And Councillor Richards you've brought forward, you know, many of the, you know, sort of things that are on my mind as far as, you know, what could be influencing that. I just want to be clear that I don't have the magic ball to know exactly, but I can bring you the numbers and I can bring forward some of the, you know, the ideas that that Councillor Richards has brought forward. We won't ever know. There is considerable, as Deputy Mayor Dayu has said, there's considerable variability always and always has been in vehicle counts. It is also a process driven by human beings who are counting and that sort of thing. So there's, you know, it's difficult sometimes to verify that against true. But if that's right, sort of just to get your feel of, you know, is this something, you know, you'd like to look at? You know, we have looked at it in the past, just as far as annual reports and that sort of thing. So I'm happy to bring some of that.
We know that you do not have a magic wand. And that, you know, I mean, whatever insight you can bring back from having looked at the numbers and considering, you know, the variables to the best extent that you can, I think is all we're really looking for. Go ahead.
Just back to Deputy Mayor Dayu's comment about bang the table and gathering information there. Just want to circle back on that. Just so if we are directed to do something along that line, what that might look like.
Personally, I think we need to hold off on that for a little while. It may be that the, you know, we need to have a discussion about communications and how we're going to communicate with the public. And we also, I think there may be some suggestions that come out of the newly created, once it's in place, Environment and Stewardship Committee may have some thoughts about, you know, what they would like to do or work with this. And so you're not getting anything more specific than what we're asking for right now. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. No direction at all. It's more, hey, as we move forward collectively,
Think about these
you
things.
know, what a cool thing we might want to bear in mind.
Okay, so is that everything on the first report? Because you know we're not finished. Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the report? Councillors Barry and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Richards, be it resolved, Council receives report EB 123 regarding monthly activities submitted by Melissa Murray and dated January 19th, 2023 for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Okay, next is the waste management contract extension.
Thank you, Mayor Council. So our contract for site services, so site attendance and site maintenance is up for renewal as of March 31st this year. This was a new contract that was negotiated in 2019, so pre-COVID, and just put things in framework. And that contract included options for extension. So this is taking advantage of one year extension on that. We've been given a proposal with a rate increase 6.2% on the current rate. Due to some increases in costs, minimum wage has gone up, and then just operating costs. So that's where that is at. In addition, we've been in discussion with the contractor as far as providing some additional services that aren't included in the current contract. But we've seen an opportunity where they may be able to help out with some service needs that we can't meet within the township. So that's providing some general labor and specialized labor for site services, separating materials, having to, when we've had materials dumped and things like that, to be able to bring in their own resources to handle that sort of thing.
So therein lies the need for two different rates, hourly rates.
Yes,
This-
so the increased hourly rate for the labor is a different level of service, and not that's not the work that site attendants would be doing on their own. So this is, bringing in somebody with more skills, more resources to complete that work. And if that person needed, so that's essentially bringing in like a contractor, not a site attendant. And if that person needed support, then we would bring in site attendants to support them at the site attendant rate. If it was for regular work. So this is sort of a different degree of service provision than is included in the existing.
So the $39,775 would be an upset limit in that case?
So the budget, the $2,500 that I put for particular for labor there, yes, would be.
Questions? Councillor Barry?
I did send a note to Angie about this, and she said that in the report, it does say that in addition to this, that any additional training would be in regards to the weigh scale. My question to Angie was, and I'm just going to ask you as well, is if the attendants are properly trained in accessibility. And she assured me that they are, but they're through Watson, not through the township. And I just wanted to know if that training, if we know any idea on what that training is in regards to use and working with specifically seniors or people with accessibility needs.
Go ahead.
So the contract includes the provisions that they have to meet the AODA standards for accessibility training. So that that covers sort of the baseline that all municipal staff that it's the same level of training that we all have there. And accessibility issues are something that certainly we discuss, when issues come up and that sort of thing is how to assist people and what sort of supports are needed at the site. So that's certainly part of our day-to-day, management operations.
How to assist the public. Okay. Other questions about the recommendation about the contract? Or comments? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to recommend approval? Councillor Short-Reed, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, Council receives report EB 223 regarding site services contract extension submitted by Melissa Murray and dated January 19th, 2023. And Council approves a request from Watson General Contracting to extend the contract for an additional 1-year term with additional site attendant hours at an hourly rate of $23.08 plus applicable taxes for the period of April 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2024. And that council concurs with the recommendation of staff to include $2,500 in the 2023 budget for contracting of Watson General Contracting for provisions of labor for specific site tasks at the rate of $27 an hour, $27 plus applicable tax. And that council concurs with the recommendation of staff to include $23,500 in the 2023 budget for contracted services for the Maple Lake Waste Management Site for provisions of an additional tenant for the site from May 1st to October 15th, 2023, and then a bylaw to authorize the signing of an agreement with Watson General Contracting for extension of the contract for site attendant and site maintenance services be tabled at the next regular meeting of council.
All in favor? That's carried. Well, I suspect this next item might have a little bit of discussion attached to it. So next report is waste management site hours of operations. I remember the last time that we did this and it was really, really challenging.
Yes, I don't like to bring anything, fluffy forward, so this is some big topics. The site hours of operation haven't been reviewed or changed in quite some time other than minor changes. So this is a fairly substantial shift. And the thought behind that was if changes are needed, let's look at addressing all of our needs in one shot so that people can get used to a new structure. And there will be some adjustment needed with any change there is. So that's just a sort of background to keep in mind there. Maybe I will leave it to you if you've got questions and if there's concerns or anything that I can address here. Hopefully I've laid out sort of clearly as much as possible sort of where the changes originated from, like what the background is for those, and then what I propose to address some of those needs.
Well, I have some thoughts, and I know that there are some other thoughts that, around the table. So I will leave it to members of council first to see what comes up from the discussion. Comments, questions, concerns? Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Well, I'll go straight to Oxtongue Lake, I think. Surprise. I absolutely appreciate the proposal and the rationale. Don't confuse that. I am concerned about taking Mondays away for a couple of reasons. One refers back to the conversation we just had actually about not really knowing the reason behind the numbers. That the traffic count isn't a measure of change or a perfect measure of change. And I'm fearful of taking Monday away if, for example, the people who go on Monday are the demographic of professionals who have every weekend, a long weekend at the cottage and are leaving the cottage on the Monday in order to resume work on Tuesday. I have no idea. I don't have that information at all. But without knowing the demographic, I'm not sure I would feel comfortable, because that's a very different scenario to Joe Smith down the road who could go on Monday or Tuesday. It doesn't matter to him, and he's just going Monday because. And it's a very different demographic from that hypothesis, that hypothetical. I note that we've got very few small numbers, relatively small numbers at Oxtongue Lake, but the difference between the Monday traffic and the average traffic is about 5.8 cars. It's not a huge drop on Mondays. So I put out there, I'm not really comfortable with the proposal to close on
Losing a
Mondays.
day. I tend to agree, but I see Melissa's got a comment to make there.
If I may, thank you. One factor just to bring forward there is that holiday Mondays, the site would still be open. And this is only for the summer season. So we're only looking Mondays in the winter, the site's never been open. So in the summer, that's one day a month. that the site is open Mondays. So that offsets that the average numbers that are there include traffic from those holiday Mondays. And those traffic on those days is significantly higher than it is on the average Monday. And I'd certainly be, if you want to see those, I can certainly bring them to you, but that does sway the numbers, not substantially. I mean, because they're such small numbers, one vehicle makes, a percentage difference. So it's hard to look at it that way. It's just sort of the amount of the level or the amount of days that the site is open and matching the service needed to the service provided. So just trying to create some, efficiencies in there. And I absolutely understand, there may be, and that's with every site and any change you make. Yes, there may be some people that are missed, and we'll do our best to accommodate that there's other options for them. So.
Well, I think it's recognized you've tried to do your best to shift and shuffle, in the most equitable way possible. I too had a concern about the optics of what appears to be closing the one, it looks like, oh, now we're losing a day. How come we're losing a day? It's just like the optics of what appears to be a loss to those residents. But, it may be once we're finished the discussion that we might have to ask Melissa to bring this back. But I look for other comments, questions. Councillor Richards.
To me, these hours seem acceptable, but obviously I'm more used to the, Maple Lake, Pine Springs area. But I'm wondering if we would consider giving the public any type of consultation on this before going forward.
I think our CAO might have a comment about that.
I just want to remind council that we are under a bit of a time crunch with this decision because the landfill cards are being renewed this year and they would go out in the interim tax bill. And the hours are on the landfill card.
Okay, so would that, just kind of thinking ahead, would that pose a problem if this came back at our February the 2nd meeting? We'd still have enough time to, we would not.
No.
Okay, Councillor Shortreed.
Just a question off the top of my head. Do we have a lot of complaints about the hours that they are now?
If I may,
Yes.
there certainly is feedback, and I think the challenge is we will never have hours that are going to
Please
meet
everyone.
everybody's needs. So certainly, I do hear from residents and say, oh, well, I want, I want Maple Lake to be open 7 days a week and 10 hours a day. Well, I have to weigh that against what we can reasonably offer and what services are being utilized.
There's
So
not a lot.
we don't get a lot of complaints. And the greatest challenge actually that we run into is where people are having difficulty knowing what the hours are. So, they show up at a site at 10 o'clock and it doesn't open until 1 o'clock. Well, what do you mean it's not open? I have on my card here, it says it's open at 10 o'clock and it's not open till 1 o'clock. Oh, well, you're got the wrong side of the card or you're looking at the wrong site and that sort of thing. So, that was a push behind bringing a little bit of consistency to the hours there. And as I say, again, sort of with any change, there's going to be, it's not going to be ideal for everyone. Our current hours aren't ideal for everyone. Just trying to make the best we can to meet the needs of our community and to address some of the common concerns that have.
To your original earlier comment about consultation, the last time that we changed hours, there was a fair bit of consultation and it was a nightmare because everybody wanted something different. It was just literally impossible to work it out so that everybody was going to be happy because that's not human nature. that everybody's happy. You mentioned consistency and that was one of the concerns that I had was that like, in some cases, there's 3 different closing times or opening times and that I would find confusing. Like for myself, I have been one of those people outside the closed gates with blue smoke coming out of the car. And it's my own fault. I know that, but when looking for consistency, if we, at least had closing time the same, or, I just, I'm not quite sure. You've thought about this a lot more than me, but that was my first thought. Like we've got, oh my, there's 3 different closing times here, and I would like to see it a little more consistent if that's possible. But I'm not sure if we've got time to make a change. I mean, it may be that we have to do this as a 1-year trial, and I'm not. I see hands up, so we'll go to Councillor Barry and then Councillor Short-Reed and then back to Councillor Richards.
That was my initial thoughts too, is, you kind of just get to be a bit of a creature of habit and knowing. I mean, I could see easily making the mistake on the 5 and 6 PM dates easily, you look at the calendar and you've got the wrong, like even the calendar starts at a Saturday, so you might think that. I think if there is some consistency just with the times. I know you've done a great job of looking at when people are using the landfills and trying to find some efficiencies in a later start or an earlier close or a later start, which makes sense. But yeah, I do wonder if there is a way to do that. And will the public be upset? This is a thought I had. If they're used to being able to access at 7 PM, even if it's only 5 of our constituents in each part of the municipality, maybe that's the only time that they can get there is after work. Having all of our landfills now stop at 5 or 6, it does make it challenging. Now you're only able to, if you can't do it after work, then you would have to do it on the weekend. I don't know. Those are just 2 of my thoughts.
Councillor Short-Reed.
I was just gonna say that at least we have a communication officer now that we can use repeatedly to get it out there every week, right? Something to drill it into people's heads. The dump hours have changed, right?
Oh yeah, that's absolutely
And
part
not
of it.
winter, just only summer, like only summer hours have changed, winter's staying the same, but I think if we get it out there, even with a mailing, I don't know, something that will touch base with everyone so they do know.
But just one question before we get here, we're also doing a mail out with the first tax bill or not? Are we waiting until the second?
A newsletter, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes, we are doing one, the first one.
Because that can be included in that information. Councillor Richards.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. You're never going to make anybody happy. As far as the complaints go, so it's almost close to being all I hear about. So, I don't think that they're necessarily calling the township office to make the complaint, but the hours are like, first is, well, why can't we get our dump back? Second is, well, if we can't get it back, can we please just get the hours better? I do like the perspective though of trying to make the hours more the same all the time. It's easier to remember that way. Sundays, I do like that it's open later because typical seasonal time to leave is between 4 and 6 PM. So I'm not surprised they're not really seeing anybody after 6 PM. And obviously we got to get this out. So public consultation is not going to happen right now.
No. Councillor Barry.
Just a curiosity, overall, this is an increase in hours? Does it change? I guess like I'm trying to think of a way to
Yes.
serve it
Yes, it
to the public. Is each of the 4 landfills having an increase in hours?
If I may.
Yes.
So overall, across the system, it's almost a net 0. So we've just adjusted hours. The addition of the additional day at Maple sways that balance into an increase. So a lot of it's just readjusting the hours to to better utilize our existing hours. And I just wanted to sort of comment on consistency, and I recognize, and I've done my best to sort of accommodate that. If we wanted to go to have, a 5 or 6 p.m. closing for, all the evenings, that could be done, but it would be an increase, in hours. And particularly, taking Saturday to 6 p.m. Saturday afternoons aren't very well utilized as it is. So 5 p.m. was a bit of a compromise, even at that. And I really juggled with, is the benefit there to have the hours just to make that consistent? And the 6, between 6 or 7, really that hour is so underutilized. And yes, we will miss those couple of people who are there every Monday at 7. We'll have to adjust, but it's part of the bigger picture, and hopefully we can, we can all adjust our systems, and site user, just like everybody, I'll have to change my regular time, doesn't fit in this schedule. So I'll come up with a new plan to address that. And it will, every change is some challenges to it, some difficulties. So we'll do our best to, I think I've brought forward the best that I can to accommodate that. Some of the times that are a little bit out of sync sort of with others are because that's where site attendants have identified that there are particular needs for that time. So, the 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. that is a time that site attendants identified that there is a particular user group that is consistently there at that time. So we've tried to keep that in the model, even though it isn't consistent in some of the other times. So it's a juggle, and if we'd like to look at increasing the hours to accommodate increased consistency, that's something certainly I can do. My decision-making process had a lot that went into it, budget needs, efficiency, utilizing our sites as best we can. So I'm open to feedback, but we would need to make a decision today, or the other option is to defer this for another year, and that would have some budget implications. So.
I would not be in favor of deferring it for another year. That's for sure. I'd be more apt to say, okay, let's give it a try. You've looked at all the possible, ways of balancing this. You've looked at it hard and long, and I guess the best thing to do is to give it a try. If we don't have time to make the changes now, try it for a first year. It's just a summer. Did you have a comment you wanted to make? Okay. Deputy Mayor Dayu?
And, thinking practically in view of the arguments and the rationale for the proposed changes in opening closing hours, the majority of people won't even feel that there is a difference in hours because they're not going at the hours that we're proposing to take away. So the life experience for the landfill will not have changed for the vast majority of people. Maybe the site attendants already know very well the folks who fall within that the hour or so, there maybe conversations can help that in some way. I leave that with you. Having said that, I remain not in favor of changing Mondays at Oxton.
Do we know what the financial impact would be by maintaining that additional time at Oxton?
Just give me a moment and I will see if I can share this with there.
I mean, it doesn't need to be an approximation.
Just have to find the right file here and
Go ahead.
So my thought is. Sorry, my question is, do you think that it is the fact that the Ox Tongue Lake would be closed on that extra day versus if there was, what am I trying to say? Being able to use the landfill on a Monday versus a full day on a Monday? Do you know what I mean? If even if it wasn't a full day, but a partial day?
I would put that to Melissa for comment, because I think that's a great question. And I think Melissa knows far better than I would.
If I may, and my sincere apologies, I was just calculating numbers. So, but I think you were looking for what the difference to have the close for the full day or just reducing the hours that day. Mondays, the site is open 5 hours. We try just, to working with staffing, that sort of thing, to keep 4 hours as a minimum. By the time, attendance driven there and that sort of thing, it would be difficult probably to get somebody in for less time than that. So certainly we could, as an option, we could reduce, by an hour. The financial impact of that would be fairly small. Just in getting back to the financial cost of having those hours or not is about $2,500. So it's not, it's not hundreds of thousands or anything like that. But it in the bigger picture of our site budget, those they all add up. So it's not insignificant.
It sounds to me like the 4 hours might be a compromise this week, as opposed to 5 hours. Like if we keep it open on that day, but for 4 hours instead of 5, that would stave off some of the major concern.
And with the proposed new hours, it's consistent, any of the other sites consistently have 9 to. So I would suggest that we stick with 9 to 1. I know previously it was 8. But again, for the consistency.
That sound reasonable? Okay. Any other questions or comments about the hours? I mean, if all hell breaks loose and the world does not like it, next year we can change. Can I have a mover and a seconder then to accept the hours as amended? Councillor Richards, Councillor Short-Reed.
Moved by Councillor Richards, second by Councillor Short-Reed. Be it resolved, Council receives report EB 322 submitted by Melissa Murray and dated January 19th, 2023. The council concurs with the recommended changes as amended in operating hours at waste management sites beginning May 1st, 2023, and that bylaw 2012-15 be amended to reflect changes to operating hours for the waste management sites effective May 1st, 2023.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Melissa. There's a lot of work gone into these reports and we appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And I just to clarify, the January 1st, we didn't have any discussion about that. I just wanted to make sure we didn't overlook that inclusion. Okay. No, thank you. That's great.
We're good.
I apologize, and that's my I just didn't bring that forward. Thank you.
Pardon me? Oh, yeah. Anybody have an issue with that? It looked to me like it was the day after January the 1st that everybody was coming with all their stuff.
It was a busy day this
Yeah.
year for sure. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Next up is Mr. Thorne.
Everyone.
Morning. So the first item under Public Works is an update on the Dorset Rec Center, and it might be a split in who provides information. Or you're going to give us a report on that, or Angie?
I can, if that's all right.
Sure.
So through you, Mayor, thank you very much. So I did speak with the engineer actually this morning, and we're still working on the RFP, the draft RFP to come forward. So we're just working through final details on the draft and hopefully to see it next week.
Okay, so for you to see it, does it need to come to council again before it actually goes out or no?
No. What we'll do is staff will be looking over the RFP with the CAO and Engage. And then from there, we will be sending it out. And then the thought is that when it closes, we'll be bringing it back, obviously, to council for the recommendation, because there could be multiple bids, there could be multiple recommendations. I would really like for Engage and staff to review the RFP together and then recommendations to come forward from there.
Okay, I mean, you know very well, I cannot stress the urgency of this enough. I mean, there's a lot of really unhappy people, and I think some of them are right here in this room. You know, it's circumstances, you know, I understand that, but you know, just that we, you know, reiterate to Engage the urgency of the matter. My fear is mold is a nasty thing, and the problem is getting worse as time goes by, and so does the cost. So I find it really concerning. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, through you. So yes, I completely agree. We definitely want to move forward on this as soon as possible, but I want to stress that we can't rush this. I understand that the public wants it open and that we want it open as staff, but I really want to stress we cannot push this faster than what we can maintain currently. Only in the sense that we want to be thorough. We really want to be thorough with this project, with any project that we work on, but this one specifically because of the unknown in the mold, where it is in the building, what the project looks like. This is a massive project with a lot of moving parts, and it needs the time and the dedication to go through the project professionally and properly to ensure that we have everything covered. So staff are working extremely hard. Engage is working extremely hard. Actually, his email this morning was blood, sweat, and tears went into it. So, you know, on top of everything else that they're doing, they have really put us to the forefront to try to get this going as soon as possible. So I can't stress enough that staff are really pushing this forward as quickly and as professionally as possible.
Thank you, Adam. Councillor Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Thanks. Comment and a question. Comment being, if there is a reason to bring a report back to council in order to get this started, I would be 150,000% happy to have a special meeting should that need fall within council meetings in order to play our part in getting her giddy up. That's my comment. And the question is, in the last report we saw that Travis brought forward, it seemed like a number of the interested parties were shovel ready. Effectively, they were ready to kick off fairly soon. And I wondered, is there all reason to believe that may still be the case when the final RFPs come back, or do you think that shouldn't be hoped for?
Through you, Mayor. No, I'm pretty confident that the companies that did show up for the first review of the building, it should be pretty straightforward for them. It's just a matter of, like I said, making sure this is a really in-depth RFP with a lot of moving parts. So we have as you know, we have the HVAC, the mold removal, you know, the renovation itself, the landscaping, the earthworks to ensure that the building's not continuously leaking. Again, a lot of moving parts in this. So these contractors are aware of that, and Engage has done a great job of keeping them informed when that tender goes out. And I do believe it would run for 4 or 5 weeks, I think is what Engage has suggested, just to ensure that because of all these moving parts, we want the contractors as well to have that time to ensure that they're going through and checking everything over and making sure that they're providing an accurate RFP bid.
Other questions or comments? Okay, so we just received that for information. And next is the request for road closure for Love Fest. And we'll just wait for Councillor Barry to exit the room.
So yes, it's good to see this is back up and running again. I know they were pretty excited when they sent the letter to me. So like previous years, if anyone's not aware of what happens here is just basically they close the street down for a little event here and it brings out the community and anybody traveling by can stop in obviously and see what's going on. Typically they close the street. We barricade the street off at Harvey Avenue and Highway 35 and Harvey and Main Street. EMS is notified, the fire chief will be notified, and the staff there are also notified that if anything should come up, that they are to move the barricades and allow crews to come through if needed. This is also something that is put on the municipal 511. So anybody that runs through the 511 will see that this road is closed for an event.
So there has been no suggestion at this point in time that they want to close anything more than just that section of road, because at one point in time when they were talking about getting back into a go for the event, they were thinking about it being in a larger area, sort of expanded more into the downtown area. You haven't heard anything like that?
No, I have not. Just this letter came through and then a short email to follow up on the event, but there was no details as to further closure of any other road or requests for such.
Okay. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to approve the request? Councillors Richards and Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Richards, second by Councillor Shortreed, be it resolved, council approves a request by Tara and Kate Love to close Harvey Avenue West from the intersection of Harvey Avenue West and Highway 35 to Harvey Avenue West and Main Street on August 12th, 2023, from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. to host Love Fest, subject to the provisions of proof of liability insurance, including party alcohol liability in the amount of $5 million, naming the corporation of the Township of Algonquin Highlands as an additional name insured, and that the event organizer advise EMS, OPP, and fire services of the event and closure route and ensure clear access is provided for EMS, OPP, and fire services. And further, that council declares Love Fest an event of municipal significance for the purpose of AGCO licensing for the year 2023.
All in favor? That's carried. Oh, yeah, thanks. Well, let's talk about purchasing 2 new pickup trucks.
Yes, so as the report shows, and council may recall that in October 11th, a council meeting was given approval to staff to go out for an RFP for pickup trucks, just due to the delivery dates that we're seeing have been really extended, sometimes up to a year. We're still waiting for trucks that were bid on back in 2022, early 2022. So as a result of that, we did go out for an RFP for the purchase of 2 pickup trucks. And the results are here within the report and recommendations to follow.
Yeah, I really like the idea of ordering the pickup trucks and then, when we receive them, getting whatever attachments and, additional things that we need. That I thought that was a good plan. Comments, questions? Go ahead.
So just on your comment there, typically we do order our trucks with all the equipment on them. Unfortunately, with this process, we went this route to try to get them a little bit easier by not adding all that to it, and that we can add them on afterwards, just to make it easier for the dealerships and maybe a little bit more of an appetite for them to just bid on the trucks. And, yeah, not have to wait for parts and pieces from other companies, third parties.
Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder then to approve the request? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayou, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council receives report PW 123 regarding the purchase of 2 new pickup trucks submitted by Adam Thorne dated January 19th, 2023, and the council concurs with the recommendation made in the said report and awards the bid to Curry Chevrolet for truck number 2, a Chevrolet 1500 for the cost of $61,268 plus applicable tax. And the council concurs with the recommendation made in said report and awards the bid to Gravette Chevrolet for truck number 1 as a Chevrolet 2500 for the price bid of $69,398 plus applicable tax, and that council authorize the payment of the 2 pickup trucks come from the 2023 Public Works Equipment Reserves.
All in favor? That's carried. Next report is about a grader.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we did have a breakdown with some damage to the grader. And given the cost of the repair, I would like to have all the repairs done at Jade Equipment, which is typically where all of our maintenance and repairs have taken place in the past. And due to the cost of just a single repair, I feel that it's necessary to have council's approval for that repair to be done. And then while the machine is there, I was going to bring forward more repairs as annual repairs to the equipment. So while the machine is at their site, if I could have pre-approval to have the repairs done at the same time. Currently, the machine as it sits cannot be used, and it's just going to have to sit there until we can have the repairs done.
Questions? It makes sense to get it all done at once. Concerns? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to approve the request? Councillor Shortreed and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, council received report PW 223 regarding equipment repairs grader submitted by Adam Thorne and dated January 19th, 2023. And the council concurs with the recommendation of said report and approves Jade Equipment as a single source procurement for the repairs to the township's grader unit 096960G with an upset limit of $26,000 plus applicable tax. And the council authorized the funds for the damage repairs to be included in the Public Works 2023 budget. And that council concurs with the recommendation made in the said report and authorizes pre-approval for the additional maintenance and repair items identified in the said report while the grader is at Jade Equipment to an upset limit of $16,000 plus applicable tax to be funded from the 2023 budget.
All in favor? That's carried. Okay, finally, your monthly activities.
Yes, thank you. So first thing I'd like to bring up is just the for the airport would be the year-end fuel usage. As you can see from the report, the 100 LL has been increased or was an increase, and the Jet A1 was decreased. This reflection really isn't anything of staff or of the airport, just more weather and flights that have come in and have gone out. So I just wanted to note the year-end fuel usage. Something that I really want to make a note of here at the very bottom of roads and streetlights is the declaration of a significant weather event. I wanted to bring this up because this was I think our second time using the declaration since it was put in 2018. And I just wanted to say that staff did an amazing job of working through this. I know there was great communication between myself and the CAO to keep council apprised of what was going on. But the scope of that day or the couple days was pretty amazing. Between staff communication before the storm even took place, there was a lot of communications between Algonquin, Highlands and the other municipalities to decide when we were going to declare and how we would be declaring. So that was great communication. I think we had 2 or 3 meetings regarding that. Once we declared, it was basically just working and working and working until the storm was over. And staff that were out on the roads, that were out at the buildings, staff here in the office, that we all pulled together to really make sure that this went as smooth as it could for us to get through. Part of this too, and pre-planning when emergencies like this come up, is we reach out to all of our fuel providers for equipment and buildings. And all of them came forward and filled all of our tanks prior to the storm, which was great to have happen just in case. And communications between the fire chief and myself during the storm, being up on the roads and seeing 8-foot tall snowbanks and being in the snow literally up to my chest when we had a truck stuck in the ditch. It's pretty amazing that you get focused on some certain things that are right in front of you, but then you get other people like the fire chief, like the CAO, reaching out for additional information, and it triggers that thought process to maybe, you know, send out those notices to clear your exhaust from people's houses or driveways. You know, some of the roadways that we were pushing snow, not purposely by any means, but just pushing it to the side of the road, like an 8-foot snowbank. How does the fire department get through that? So the fire chief and I worked well together on creating a plan for a municipal truck to go out to, you know, basically punch a hole through the snowbank for the fire department. And the snow difference between Stanhope roads down here in the south were 20 to 24 inches. Dorset was seeing upwards of 36 inches. Oxtongue was just a little bit more than that. So it was quite the difference when we had trucks going out and what they were reporting back. So overall, we learned a lot. We had a meeting afterwards to discuss the pros and cons of everything and how we can do better next time. And overall, I'm pretty happy with the results of it, considering the amount of hours that we had to put in. But all in all, it was great. And I just can't thank staff enough for their hard work and efforts on that. So, and counsel you as well for the support that you give us to do these things, to get out there and clean the roads and keep them safe.
Well, on behalf of council, I mean, we definitely add our appreciation to all staff. There was obviously an extraordinary effort put into that time and that particular time of year, like, you know, when everybody wants to be home and with their family, and it was really a job well done. I certainly heard no complaints from anybody. I think that we did an exemplary job, and to all, a job well done.
Yeah, and also I want to bring up a little bit about the landfill. I know Melissa touched on it as well, but I know closing the landfills is definitely a struggle, and it's a hard thing to do. But it was greatly appreciated by staff that it was able to be closed. It allowed staff to focus on the roads, which we follow the minimum maintenance standards. We have regulations for those, so it allowed us to continue that. And you know, I don't think that we would have called trucks off the roads given the way the snow was coming in. It's just unfortunate with some of our trucks getting stuck that caused us to, you know, to really have to focus on that towards the end of the day and Christmas Eve. But having the landfills closed was really helped us. And then we were able to focus on them, which helped out the contracted staff as well, because I think we were almost 4 or 5 hours just cleaning up Maple alone. And I just couldn't imagine what that would have been like trying to do that in a blinding snowstorm with traffic. So as much as it was an inconvenient, it really helped us.
It's just a matter of where your priorities lay, and you made the right call. So any other comments or questions about the monthly activity report? Councillor Richards.
I just wanted to actually pass on, I got a lot of phone calls and even people dropping by to comment on the weather event, and what an excellent job was done. It really was actually very overwhelming in the community, saying absolutely wonderful things about you and your team. And I wanted to let you know that.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
So we have a group hug?
No. But I think this is one of those times where it is appropriate for some repetition. And I express exactly the same from up in Ward 3. The feeling I got on the day, and especially now hearing you talk about what was going underneath the surface, was what we see when we watch professional ballet. You know, they make it look so effortless, and yet so much work and choreography and intention and dedication has gone into that. I remember going out on Christmas Day with the dog and Mike had already been by, he'd already, or whoever was on, it's often Mike. And it was clean and it was beautiful. And it was so simple, but it wasn't. And it's that, yeah, oh yeah, it was, you rocked it. You just rocked it. Yeah.
Well, through you, Mayor, honestly, I play a very small part in this. Like I said, for this event alone, the CAO played a big part, the fire chief played a big part, and so did the communications coordinator and the environmental coordinator, or environmental manager. We all played a small part to make something big like this happen. And even to go further, like we never needed the buildings, but all the generators were cleaned out Christmas morning. And I know it may sound strange to have maintenance staff come in and clean generators Christmas morning, but there was a lot of generator issues within the county alone for the amount of snow that was sucked up into generators, and they weren't running. And just from my own experience dealing with a company on a generator, that's all they did for the next week was deal with snow intake. So keeping those clear, keeping the sidewalks clear, we did have to go to the tower and help out up there a little bit to get the cell tower back up and running. There's a lot of moving parts, and not one person could take more credit than the whole team. So I really appreciate all of your support on this, but yeah, it's a big team, so we all work together.
Thank you. Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the monthly activity report? Councillor Short Reed and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Short Reed, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, Council receives report PW 323 regarding monthly activities submitted by Adam Thorne and dated January 19th, 2023 for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Thanks,
great day.
Adam. Okay, we will we'll get into fire services before we break for lunch. Good morning, Chief.
Morning, Mayor and Council.
If you want to give us your monthly activity report or highlights from it.
Yeah, there's a couple highlights I'd like to bring forward. We did receive a grant from the Fire Marshal Public Safety Council for textbooks for firefighter certification for $1,947. The books have been ordered and they'll be here for our new recruits when they start the recruit classes, which will start in February. Overall, for our year, our call volume is down by 13% based on last year over year. And we only had one structure fire in the Township of Algonquin Highlands, which is great because it's showing people being safe and our public education starting to make an impact. It's going to be sort of redundant from what admin brought forward, but I just want to bring forward again over the storm we had at Christmas time. The work with the public works manager, we had a plan in place. So if we did have a fire call, we would be assisted by public works to get there. Also, there's protocols for our actual firefighters that we ensured that if we did leave for a call, they would take a sleigh, a snowmobile, track, ATV, whatever they could to access. So that was good. Along with Chad was wonderful. He kept our social media updated and making sure that people ensured their vents were clear and reminders to keep your generators outside, not inside, and that. And as usual, the CEO was the anchor of the whole process there. So again, it's just echoing what everyone else said, but it was really nice to see. The last part here is we'll see the staffing. We've asked to bring on 2 more firefighters. That brings our complement in Dorset and Stanhope both up to full complement. And that's the first time that's happened in years.
Wow, here. Way to go.
Yeah. So, and it's good. And a really nice, good thing was I went over to the Station 80 yesterday afternoon. I walked in and there's 2 of our new recruits along with one of our other firefighters sitting there practicing knots. So they're really like they're doing that at their own free will, but they want to be ready for the recruit training because they don't want to just go and follow the program. They want to be able to excel. So I think that's very important in the whole aspect of it. So
Great sign.
yeah, it is very good. And there are not any questions.
Any questions on the monthly activity report? Could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Councillor Barry, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Deputy Mayor Dyou, be it resolved, council receives report FD 123 government monthly activities submitted by Michael French and dated January 19th, 2023, and council appoints Annie Logan as firefighter for Station 70 and Tiffany English as firefighter for Station 80. And further, the council accepts with regret the resignation of Mike Brinko, Scanna Laverne, Brent Hicks, Blair Kelly, and Brian Johnson, Station 80, and Mitchell Ianni, Station 70, effective December 31st, 2022.
All in favor? That's carried. Next up is the health and safety policy, which is something that we do annually.
Yes. The employer is obligated to prepare a written health and safety policy each year. And it is reviewed each year. So our last one was done January of last year. So you'll see the new written policy for council to pass going forward for the year 2023.
Questions about the policy? Seeing none? Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Shortreed and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Richards, be it resolved, council receives report FD 223 regarding the health and safety policy submitted by Michael French and dated January 19th, 2023, and further, council has reviewed the health and safety policy in accordance with section 25(2)J of the Occupational Health and Safety Act, RSO 1990, and directs a bylaw be brought forward to adopt the said policy.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Who will do finance? Welcome, Madam Treasurer.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first item is the interim tax notice.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. It's just the normal, we passed the borrowing bylaw and the interim tax bylaw at the first meeting in January. So those bylaws, which are standard, are part of the bylaw section in the meeting.
Any questions about this bylaw? So I just for your own purposes, I mean, this is an annual thing that we put in place to allow us to continue operating should we need to borrow funding until the tax funds start to come in. So it's a standard piece that we don't often have to put into play. So, okay, if there's no questions, I guess that will be under the bylaw portion of the agenda. So maybe you could just talk briefly about the tax write-offs.
I can. There's a report here from Karen Mintz, our tax administrator, for council approval for the tax write-off under demolition or raised by fire under section 357 for a property roll number in the amount of $288.64.
Any questions? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to approve this write-off? Councillor Richard, Deputy Mayor Dyou.
Moved by Councillor Richard, second by Deputy Mayor Dyou, be it resolved, council receives report TT 123 regarding tax write-offs submitted by Karen Mintz dated January 19th, 2023, and council hereby approves the noted tax write-off in the amount of $288.64 in accordance with section 357 of the Municipal Act.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is the statement of remuneration for council and committees. Also a standard annual requirement. Just outlines what we received in per diems, benefits, mileage. Any questions anyone's got about that? Could I have a mover and a seconder to receive that report? Councillor Shortreed and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Barry, be resolved, council receives report TT 223 regarding the 2022 council and committee remuneration and expenses submitted by Jean Hughes and dated January 19th, 2023.
All in favor? That's carried. And finally, the account summary. Are there any questions about the account summary? It is what it is. Seeing none, Could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the account summary report? Councillors Richards and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Richards, seconded by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved that council has reviewed the expenditures incurred as set out in the account summary report GT 323 in the total amount of $2,705,387.61 and hereby approves payment as same.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. I'm sure that you are a busy person these days, and we really look forward to the middle of February.
Thank you very much.
Oh, one question for you. What sort of lead time would you be able to give us with the budget binders once they're ready?
Our intention is to have them out the 6th, 7th of February, a week ahead.
Okay,
That was in accordance with the schedule that we approved at council back in November. So that's my goal.
that's your goal. Right on. Well, may you reach your goal.
Yes.
And I think that we will now break for lunch. Okay, welcome back. We are now into the administration business portion of the meeting, and the first item is appointment to committees of council. So we have a number of resolutions here, the first being for the Committee of Adjustment. So could I have a mover and a seconder to appoint the members for the Committee of Adjustment? Councillor Shore-Reed and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, seconded by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, council appoints the following members to the Committee of Adjustment for the remaining term of council: John Rogers, Chris Woods, and Christine Sharp.
All in favor? That's carried. And just to clarify, we've already done resolutions to appoint members of council, right?
Got those on. My apologies.
So, okay. Could I have a mover and a seconder to amend that resolution to include the members of council? Okay, Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Short-Reed. So that's Councillor Richards and myself. All in favor of that amendment? That's carried. Okay, the next resolution would be to approve the members of the Cultural Plan Working Group. Mover and a seconder, Councillor Barry, Councillor Short-Reed.
Moved by Councillor Barry, seconded by Councillor Sherwood. Be it resolved, the council appoints the following members to the Cultural Plan Working Group: Cheryl Sherwood, Carol Moffett, Norma Goodyear, Jim Blake, Councillor Barry, and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
All in favor? It's carried. The next is appointment of members to the Dorset Museum Committee. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Barry, Councillor Short-Reed.
Moved by Councillor Barry, seconded by Councillor Short-Reed. Be it resolved, the following members be appointed to the Dorset Heritage Museum for the remaining term of council: Gord Henderson, Layla McGuire, Lee Payne, Barb Constantine, Carrie Locke, Sandy McKay, Counselor Shortreed, and Counselor Barry.
All in favor? It's carried. The next is appointing members to the Recreation Committee. A mover and a seconder. Counselor Barry, Counselor Shortreed.
Moved by Counselor Barry, second by Counselor Shortreed, be it resolved the following members be appointed to the Recreation Committee for the remaining term of council: Susan Trommenhauser, Laura Finley, Jolene Thomas, Kim Gruthoff, Jaden Wilson, Chase Renea, Counselor Richards, Counselor Shortreed.
All in favor? It's carried. And finally, to appoint to the Stanhope Heritage Museum Committee. Mover and a seconder, Counselor Shortreed, Counselor Richards.
Moved by Counselor Shortreed, second by Counselor Richards. Be it resolved, council appoints the following members to the Stanhope Heritage Museum Committee: Pamela Osborne, Bill Forbes, Susan Robinson, Adela Spina, Carol Moffat, Peter Hewitt, Norma Goodger, Ann Hewitt, Counselor Barry, Counselor Richards.
All in favor? It's carried. So next are two other appointments. One is to the Community Policing Advisory Committee. Just for a little bit of background information on that. The Community Policing Advisory Committee was represented by Mayor Moffat in the past, but when we were directed to develop a community safety and well-being plan, the structure would change from there being a CPAC committee to a detachment board. And the province is responsible for doing that, for making those or setting the board up and approving the board. They've approved the structure basically, but it sounds like they're not going to actually approve the boards and put the boards in place until the end of the year, if in fact they do it this year at all. So the county was contacted by the interim detachment commander to say that they'd been talking about it, and they think, given the delay, that the best idea would be to reestablish the CPAC committee, which everybody on county council was absolutely in favor of, that, you know, that we get back into regular communications. They're aware of our concerns. We're aware of what their work is. And so those appointments have to be made by each individual municipality. So I would propose that I fill that position as the mayor for the CPAC committee. Any questions or concerns about that? Could I have a mover and a seconder then for that appointment? Counselor Barry, Counselor Richards. Both appointments on the one?
Yeah.
Okay, so the second portion of that is that the Deputy Mayor Dayu has been sitting on the Lake Simcoe Regional Conservation Authority Board for some time, and it's just, you know, something that we missed in the earlier external appointments. So I propose that she continue with that work. Comment?
Yes, with apologies, because I just noted this now. As it's written here, I don't know what's on the resolution, but on the agenda, I see Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority Board of Directors. And I've not seen the Board of Directors language on just documents coming towards me. So
Just appointing you to the Conservation Authority.
to the Conservation Authority, yeah.
So mover and a seconder to approve that, Councillor Shortreed and Richards.
Moved by Counselor Shortreed, second by Counselor Richards, be it resolved that Mayor Danielson be appointed as council representative on CPAC, and further that Deputy Mayor Dayu be appointed as council representative on the Lake Simcoe Regional Conservation Authority.
All in favor? It's carried. Next up for discussion are committee roles and structure. And this discussion is specific to two committees at this point in time. One being, I had a request to talk about the airport committee. And the second was a request by Councillor Dayu to talk about the terms of reference for the environment committee. So I'll start with the airport committee. Even though it was posted, we didn't get any responses, but since that time, there has been one individual who has contacted me, and he's got a lot of aviation and airport experience, and he's really keen. to be on a committee and to help out in any way he can with respect to aviation. The point that I wanted to make, and not everybody will necessarily agree with me, this committee used to have a much broader terms of reference, where the committee was more involved in airport development per se, and it ran into a bit of a problem where some of the members started to dig way too deep into operational matters. And, you know, there needs to be a clear divide. We all know that there needs to be a clear divide between, you know, sort of management, oversight, policy setting, and operations. And so as a result of that, the committee was, the terms of reference were revised to it being specific to events only, event planning. You know, it's been my feeling that for some time now, that, you know, that there's been maybe less focus than I personally would like to have seen on the airport. We obviously have all heard and feel like we want to move things forward at the airport. You know, whether it be through marketing or, you know, a committee that's got a little more input into how the overall development take place. I wanted to bring it to council to see, just have a bit of a discussion, see if there's any thoughts about that. I also must recognize that during the changeover, there's also been a change in the structure of the staffer there but I mean, the airport coordinator is still overseen by Adam, you know, who's got more experience now with respect to airport than he had in the past. So that might have some influence on how we go forward with this. I just kind of wanted to see if there were any thoughts. The terms of reference still use the terminology marketing, and it's not specific about what kind of marketing that might be. I mean, maybe it's intended to be marketing for events, but it could be something broader than that. You know, that, you know, maybe the committee wants to work with the economic development officer at the, you know, at the county to see what we can do there. I'm looking for thoughts on the airport committee and what, I mean, we're in a perfect position because it's been on a hiatus for some time now. There's been no activity there. There's been no ability to hold events. And I would really like it, before we get started back into having an airport committee and events happening, that we're clear on what it is we want that committee to do. So any thoughts? Councillor Richards.
Yeah, I actually, I agree. In reading it, and just the word marketing, it's a little too broad, even for me reading, to understand where that's to be focused. And I think our intention was to have it focused on economic development without going too far into it. But to use the term marketing, it just isn't enough to really demonstrate to people what that's meant to be.
I mean, obviously, we still want events and you know, the better event planning that we can do for the airport and draw traffic into the airport and put focus on the airport. I think, you know, better all around. But carry on.
Yeah, and on that, you know, I was kind of also hoping to see maybe some joint working between the rec committee and the airport committee for those events on a social level event activity, versus the committee being more focused on perhaps events that would, yes, market the airport, but to bring development to the airport, so that we can get it to a point where it is self-sustaining.
Well, I'm not sure that the events themselves can help to make the airport self-sustaining. I mean, obviously more development at the airport and marketing and, you know, bringing more activity there beyond events is what we're looking for. And you know, I know that you may have some thoughts about it. Speak freely.
I guess I'm sort of just listening so I can gather some questions, because obviously, if the committee is given more opportunity to do the marketing and things like that for the airport. I just need to know and understand from a staff perspective what that reporting structure will look like, and if there is, will the committee, if they're going to market what that will look like, will we have that input? Is it expected that staff oversee that or not? So those are just some questions that are flowing, that's all.
I definitely would see that there would be staff involvement and oversight. And that, like any other committee, if they've got a grand idea, it's got to come back to council. For a resolution agreement, and I think we need to do some work on the terms of reference so that it's clear, so that, we know exactly what we're asking the committee to do and the bounds within which they must work. And it's a good time to do it because we don't have a whole bunch of people scrambling. And if there's a better understanding of what they're being asked to be involved in, we'll hopefully get more people who are interested in being involved. I will go to Councillor Berry first and then Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Overall, I think the terms of reference are great. I think it's the purpose that we're really talking about putting some teeth into. The one key word that I think is missing in the purpose is the idea of economic development. There's been talk for years of it becoming a bit of a tourism hub, and that really hasn't come to full fruition. So I think, a tourism destination and economic development at the airport, I think is something that possibly could be considered within the terms.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I mentioned the fact that, we could, and I've been kind of poking at, and so has Deputy Mayor Dayu at Scott Ovell, the county's economic development officer, to see, what level of support we could look to him for. And, maybe it's time to ask him to come and see us and talk to us about that, so that helps us form this process. This is not something that I'm expecting us all to, to land on today, but just, that the concept is something that, you see us expanding the role of the committee. Deputy Mayor Dayu.
It's already on, look at that. Very much in line with the sentiment of Councillor Berry. I had two fairly clear ideas in my mind when I was reading through this. Three, in that one, that this could be a fairly short to medium term terms of reference only until we have the results of the renewed study, which will inform where we want to go and how a community group can participate at that stage. So that's thought number one. Number two, in advance of that, the two clear roles I was thinking of was one, promotion. I don't like the word marketing because I think promotion is more of a, I don't know, this is the spirit of the thing rather than, the technicality of marketing. And so the promotion of the events at the airport. And then I don't know what council would think about the committee working as a community liaison for, in some appropriate way, while the study is ongoing. So, how much community involvement would there be in the renewed study? Would there be consultation phases? Would there be outreach? Would there be, here are the ideas that are being percolated. What do you think as a local neighborhood? And there might be a role there for the airport committee to sort of be that liaison piece as we do the study.
I'm wondering where we stand with any, like, are we sort of at the starting point of developing a terms of reference for, not terms of reference, terms of the study that we're looking for? We're at the beginning, so we can look at that and sort of amend it according to how it fits into what Deputy Mayor Dayu's idea is.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so we're open to that. Councilor Berry.
In regards to membership, I know in some of the other committees, it specifies, on a board of this stature or involved in this type of thing. If, I'm thinking the Environment Stewardship Committee, they have recognized within their membership that they'd like to have someone on the committee from the land trust, that type of thing. I wonder within the membership component of the terms of reference that it states like someone with tourism expertise or someone with economic experience, that type of language someone might read that and think, hey, I fit this description rather than it just being a minimum number of people. That would just be a thought, just something to entice people.
It's not a bad idea. Councillor Richards.
Yeah, I would like to see some emphasis given to current tourism operators in the area. And an approach to the business community to see how the airport can help them with their businesses. And from there, maybe we can lean into how economic development from the county can align with those interests that the business community has around here. And I think maybe then at that point is when we could potentially see actually forming the committee once we have those data sets.
Well, I mean, obviously, I think what we need to do is work on a new draft of terms of reference, including, specifically, like your suggestion about specific membership and much more detail about, the sort of work that we're looking and goals that we've got. And bring it back, which I think will foster more discussion. I don't know, how much more discussion we need to have, or how much more information you need or questions you might have, before a new draft terms of reference was developed.
I'd like the opportunity to give it some thought if I could.
Okay,
if
yeah.
that's okay.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah, further to Councillor Richards' point, I am reminded at county, we've got a destination management plan, which is all about community building for specific destinations. And indeed, this is a logical overlap. So the degree to which Scott and his team gets involved in the airport writ large is certainly one piece, but the other specific piece is if we're going to do something like this team or terms of reference for committee, let's get that working into the broader destination management plan ethos, indeed. And I bet he'd have some great ideas.
I bet he does too. Well, and another thought is that for a long time, I don't know, for a long time, the county actually contributed to the costs of, I mean, it wasn't a huge contribution, but they did contribute an amount of money every year to the cost of the airport because it benefits the county as a whole. And, as soon as we started talking about the runway and the airport development that we were looking at, they just like, no way, we're not having any part of that. But I do believe that the airport is benefiting the entire county in a number of ways. Hopefully the most benefit is to us, but it does benefit the other municipalities. And I like it. There will be a point where I see us going back to the county and saying, hey, this is an area where we can maybe balance things out a little bit, because there are some areas where we are contributing funds into the county's coffers, but we don't necessarily get the benefits from. The benefits go more to, say, Minden and Dysart, and this might be a way to offset some of that, not to mention a EMS base, but that's a topic for a different day. So, we'll leave it with Angie, recognizing that we'll, work a little bit, and maybe you and I can talk a little bit more and come back with sort of a first round draft terms of reference, in which will form, a greater conversation for us. Any other thoughts at this point in time? Deputy Mayor Dayu?
It's a process question mainly. A few of us have mentioned the economic development unit at county. You and I have had a brief conversation about it as well, and how their richness of knowledge might be brought to bear into the study going forward. Is there any direction? I know that's not the topic for right now, but I wonder if direction is required to say, hey, let's explore that, or if this is enough, that we've had this conversation and staff have heard that and we'll take it away and.
I would think before it comes back to council in any form of a new draft terms of reference, then I might have a conversation with Scott and see how that can unfold and, you know, what he thinks he might be able to bring to that. I mean, it may or may not be appropriate. I'll have a discussion with him and that'll maybe form some of the timing. Yeah, I think we are. I don't think we're giving it because Angie wants a little bit of time to think about it. And I guess in essence, that's sort of direction, but thinking is like that. Another comment?
I just question,
Mhm.
what is council's thought around timing?
You know what, the sooner that we can start to have discussion, because obviously we need to have another major discussion about it before we land on a terms of reference. And I think we kind of need to do that before we actually put out a call for membership again. Councillor Barry, then Councillor Dayu.
Do we have an idea on when I believe we're going to be updating the airport development plan or that might come out of our strategic plan discussion? I just wonder, is there going to be an update on some of that, or is that?
Well, that's something that was the airport, a new plan was budgeted for last year and is going to be part of our budget discussions.
Mhm. Okay,
So
I'm just thinking timing
They
in
all
regards to the
kind of-
committee. Nice to have some of that developed for the committee.
before we go to work on the plan.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, I think that Deputy Mayor Dayu kind of referred to that.
I think I thought I understood, and then I'm not sure if I did, so maybe clarify if I've gotten it wrong, but yeah, in terms of timing, I would think if we could have the right conversations about the dev plan study for the airport and see how the committee could be rolled into that process, that would inform then the terms of reference for the committee, rather than getting a committee going and then getting the RFP going and then rejigging the terms of reference if required.
I don't know that we're calling it an ECDev plan per se, but an airport development
Sure.
plan.
That's what yeah.
Okay.
indeed, yeah.
Does that answer your question at all? Did you give you any more guidance?
I apologize. I misunderstood that. I took that the opposite way. I took it as,
I
and
thought maybe-
yeah,
Yeah.
I did. So I understood that the committee would be, the discussion around the committee would happen first. And then the committee be established and they would assist in development of.
That's the way I sort of saw it going to.
I think you could argue for both being appropriate, so it's whatever, whatever is best.
Let's see what comes back after Angie's given it some thought. We have maybe, some discussions between herself and myself and come back with some draft thoughts about how that could go forward. And I think we can then land on, which comes first. But I do see that, maybe that establishing in terms of reference and what we as a council want our committee to do, that would help, form what the foundation of the plan would be. Sound reasonable? Okay. Okay, so the second item was a discussion about the Environment and Stewardship Committee. And I have one question before we get into the discussion, and that is when we advertised for committee members, we sadly only got one response. I'm wondering if we just put out a broad advertisement for public members, or if we contacted the specific groups that are normally like the Land Trust and Environment Halliburton, and I think maybe CHA, those groups to ask if they were going to appoint members. I just can't remember if we just put out a general call for membership or if those groups were contacted.
We put out a general, as well as the environmental manager did reach out to previous sitting members, and they expressed that they would not be returning.
their individual members, or generally they no longer had an interest as an organization, you know?
That I don't know, but I can follow up with the environmental manager and find out the reasoning or the responses behind that.
Okay, because I'm sort of thinking that we should have maybe a little, like, revisit that, or have go back to them and talk to them based on the discussion that we have here, and what we want that committee to do and look like. There was also the lady who put her name forward as a member had made several suggestions about other groups that could be approached as far as membership, one being FEEL, the Friends of Environmental and Ecological Learning, that do a number of projects like plant sales and composting bins and things like that. They try to run a variety of different environmental programs, so they might also be a suggested to approach as a member, as well as the Land Between. Given their, environmental activities and interests, and, it just a thought that there are other places that we can look for membership if the existing groups that we approach, including the school, and, whether they want to have somebody, somebody involved, which, was good to have a youth member. At one point in time we had it. Councillor Barry.
Sorry, still coming. I had it and then you said the school thing and that threw me off. I also wondered.
Well, we can go back to Councillor Dayu if you need a moment to.
Sure. I did notice like a spelling thing just in regards to Reeve versus mayor, but that wasn't it.
On the terms of reference. Oh, well, we're gonna hack and slash the terms of reference maybe anyway, so.
Come back. Can I continue? Just in regards to the call out and the advertisement, some of that went out, I believe, before our last discussion in regards to meeting not in person. And I did wonder if, given some of the travel distance of our previous membership on that committee specifically, if they knew that they could join via online, if that would change their position on interest in the committee.
Maybe. Could we just make sure that they're advised of that fact? Back to you.
I guess I'm looking at this with a couple of observations rather than requests, because I'm not sure how to land those observations into something tangible. But what I observed, and I'd be so curious to hear Councillor Barry's perspective as well on this. I observed in the brief period of time last term that we were acting as a committee, I think it was a year and a half or 3/4 before COVID hit, etc. So it's been a while. But in that brief time, the observation I came away with was that if you think of the township as a big puzzle, and there's tiny pieces that all intermix as a mosaic into the puzzle, that the Environment and Stewardship Committee, we hadn't really cracked the code on the very specific piece and how it would fit into that puzzle. So there were some excellent ideas that were coming from these individuals who have wonderful experience and intellect and good forward thinking sentiment on how we can protect our environment here in the township. And a lot of those ideas didn't have a home to go to. So we would have these great conversations, and then the outcome of that, unless it was a resolution to put in our minutes to council, we would suggest continuing to promote X or whatever it might be. They didn't really have a home so much. And my question from that was, is it worth considering trying to refine the terms of reference to something extremely specific and actionable, such as, and I do offer this as just one example, but such as waste management and diversion with the intention of being waste-free by 2050, like a goal that is going to require a lot of thinking, a lot of public education, some surveying, but is extremely tangible that they could really dig their teeth into? Or how do we become a pollinator friendly township? What are the different ways? What are the different mechanisms? What is the research required? But something that really offers definition to what they can expect to achieve. Because it just didn't seem to have a home to the degree that I think and I'll only speak for myself, that I wanted it to have a home.
Go ahead, Angie.
One of the things when council is having this discussion is to remember the role of the environmental manager, because at that time, Melissa was not the environmental manager. She was a coordinator, and her role on that committee was much more than it can be now. You know, she is extremely busy. And so some of the things that the committee may want to do that originally would have then sent Melissa off to do after the ideas were formulated, that won't necessarily be able to happen now. So we just need to keep that in mind as this formulates.
That's not to say that those things can't happen, but the committee would need to be more involved. I mean, assuming that there was okay, we want to do this. And council agrees, okay, that's a good idea, that the committee itself has to accept that as members of that committee, that they need to play an active role once they've been given the nod to go ahead with something. Councillor Berry.
I think that could be said for multiple committees, having staff do the work and committee create the ideas of the work that needs to be done. So I support what Angie's saying. As far as what you're saying, I think that the goals and objectives are fairly like broad but concise within the existing terms of reference in regards to, I don't think you want the terms of reference to be too specific and leave it so that, like, one of the things was to raise the profile of the environment and public understanding of environmental practices. Like, I think something like a pollinator specific thing could fit in there. So I don't think you would want to, at this point, without the committee input, to define it too tightly.
Other thoughts about where we might go forward with this? So, I mean, we need to agree on, like, do we want to change the terms of reference? Do we agree that the terms of reference as they stand allow us to do, like, I mean, we can still hone in on certain things. If the terms of reference are as they are, the committee meets and agree, okay, here's what we're going to put our focus into without, getting too fractured. That, I sort of see that what you're saying can happen. Do we need to change the terms of reference? It's obvious that we need to go out to these organizations and talk about, we've got renewed energy, renewed enthusiasm. We're going to try and hone in on, don't get too scattered, to hone in on certain projects and go forward. Reach out to, some people we know and talk to them. There's been this gap where nothing's happened for quite a while. And I'm, maybe there was some level of dissatisfaction, with how the committee was working before. I'm not sure, but I think that there's an opportunity here to regroup, refresh, and get some things done. I really do. But if you believe that the terms of reference itself needs to change, then we need to hear specifically how. Councillor Richards.
I think it may be a good idea to defer this a little bit and reach out to those groups that we need clarification, if it's the group or if it's just the members of those groups that don't wish to return. Because those groups are very knowledgeable. And maybe with hearing from them, we can make a better informed decision on the terms of reference for the committee.
That's a good point. Any further thoughts? Go ahead.
Yeah, I would agree with that and go so far as to suggest what would they like to see the committee do that would make it impactful for them to, to attend, because maybe there's a hit and miss element here and they would be able to enlighten us on that.
Okay, so how would you see that going forward? I mean, this is, you're the lead on the Environment Committee of this time around. Do you want to take that on to call those organizations and see what you can glean from some of that? I mean, I don't want to put Melissa in that position where she's got enough to do right now. And those, I think those are more politically, political types of discussions.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, if that is fine with Angie as it's a staff, I just wanna make
Yeah,
sure
but I
we're
don't want to
clear.
do something that's going
Yeah.
to step on anybody's toes,
Yeah.
but I also think that it is more political in nature. And,
Sure, I'm happy to do that.
and based on, the level of success that you have with the existing organizations that we've got listed. If you're not having any level of success, maybe we can look at these other organizations and consider them for membership too. Saw a hand over here. Councillor Barry.
My question was just, shall we leave it with Jen or should we put it out as well again, even just through our Facebook page, even just through Chad? Maybe not an ad in the paper, but.
I think we could probably do both at the same time.
Indeed, unless in conversation with those individuals, it is revealed, well, this is why I didn't want to continue and this is what what would make it awesome. And if
Oh.
there's consistency there and it meets the needs of council and the township, then
I would think maybe having those conversations first might help.
yeah.
There's, we want to, if we're going to, kind of refresh the structure and get moving again on committees, we want to get it right. And so if it takes a bit of time to have some discussions and, just sort of refine things in the way that we need to, I don't think there's no mad dash. I have this in place and, we start to meet next month. We've got a whole term to get this right. And I think that, those discussions might help. Other thoughts? Councillor Barry?
That being said, in the membership, it does say 2 members of the public who are a municipal elector. In our own discussions with people in the area, we can still say that there is availability if they want to put a name forward. If they're not, if Jen's going to reach out to the land trust, CHA, the high school,
And environment. health.
environment health. It's still.
We're
saying-
still needing members of the public. So you're back to your, do we do the both at the same time?
I would just be back to the idea that if we then change the terms of reference and we've collected their names, then it gets a bit wobbly. And as there is no mad dash, I think my preference would be one step at a time.
Okay. We'll leave it with you for now. So I think that's everything. Is there anything else when it comes to general, because we left it kind of general discussion about committees, roles and structure. Is there anything else that anybody wants to raise about in a general way about committees, committee structure? Councillor Richards and Councillor Barry.
I would just like to see perhaps maybe we promote it a little bit, that we have approved the Zoom attendance to the meetings. Because I don't think that was really put out too much to the public's awareness. And maybe that would help in getting some more support on these committees.
Just as an advisory to anyone who's considering joining a committee. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Clarification, I have it in my notes, but I just wanted to confirm that it was done by resolution that I've been appointed to the county land division. Is that
That appointment has already been made.
okay?
as an
my notes
alternate.
As an alternate.
That does not mean that you need to go to the meetings.
I don't need to know.
But you should probably be
That's what I-
following them.
Yeah.
Just to sort of see how it works, because if I'm not available, then you're it.
Okay. I just haven't received anything, so I just checking to make sure I've been appointed as an alternate and that there's information coming my way. As an alternate.
I'll check with the land division secretary and just make sure that that happens, or what, what the process is with that, because this is my first crack at the new, new committee. And in fact, we are still missing a member from Minden Hills. There's been no appointment from Minden. Okay, anything else about committees? And do you have any outstanding questions? I'm sure it will
I
all come
don't.
back.
Perhaps, but
Yeah.
not right now. Thank
No.
you.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is I'm sorry?
Sorry, one further thing, just because we're in it to win it. Is there scope to review staff involvement on the committees? Because there are some committees where the staff load has been incredibly high, unfairly high. And there are other places where, the staff role maybe isn't all that clear, or is more of a minute taker. Is there any need, and I guess I keep looking at you, Angie, to look at that in detail again and start afresh with a new way of understanding, or a better delineated way of understanding staff roles?
I think there is opportunity, yes, particularly with a couple of the committees. And given that the committees that I'm thinking of are going to be starting sort of in a new way, I think that will provide that opportunity.
I'm sure Sean would like to have a discussion about that.
Do you mean for council to discuss your recommendations on that, or for each committee to consider how that would happen?
I don't, if I may.
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
believe that the terms of reference will need to be amended, which would obviously require council's approval. I think it's a matter of the way things are done, really, and how they're directed from the community. It just needs to change, that's all.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I very, very much agree. Couldn't agree more. I guess my question then is process. How can this body help to make sure that the right changes are made and are upheld?
I see that through the council reps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will probably form part of our future discussions. When you think about the fact that for instance, the recreation committee is, kind of the only committee that I see that has a real, that's their job. Where there are other staff members who have taken it on or been assigned to the committee to support the committee, but it's not necessarily part of their actual job. So maybe some further discussion about that when, when terms of reference come back, or we start to hone in on individual committees. Okay, so that everything about committees. So the next item on the agenda is the donation from the Goring Family Foundation. We obviously we're supremely grateful for the ongoing donations that we receive from this foundation. And I gathered that we need a resolution to receive the donation and obviously authorize it, a letter of appreciation and thanks would go out under my signature. Any other comments or thoughts about this item? So could I have a mover and a seconder to receive gratefully? Councillor Richards, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Richards, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, council acknowledge with sincere appreciation receipt of a $5,000 donation to the Dorset Heritage Museum Special Projects from the Goring Family Foundation.
All in favor? That's carried. Next on the agenda is a discussion about in-person delegations. And I had asked for this based on, well, we are slowly moving forward to a different model about, how, public attendance or, who's going to be able to attend in person. We've got, staff, there's been some changes with how staff are interacting with us, which is a really positive move. We recently had a request for a delegation and the individual had requested that they be able to attend in person. There were some thoughts from our CAO about how that would happen, but I think it's time that we start slowly moving forward, with opening things up a little bit. And, if it's just starting to allow delegations as opposed to the public en masse being able to attend our meetings whenever they feel like it, as far as the public's perspective is, it's so easy for them to, sit at home or listen to a meeting while they're doing something else, because they're live streamed, they're available on Zoom. But I would like to recommend or see us come to an agreement that we allow in-person delegations. There's, something so much more impactful when somebody is coming to us with a delegation information to, have a personal exchange with them. So I'm looking for thoughts on that. I know that the CAO has some thoughts about how that would be managed to begin with, that, that they come into the room when it's time for them to make their delegation and they leave the room when they're complete with their delegation. And, if that's a comfort level that we've got at this point in time, we're still making steps forward, but I'm looking for thoughts on moving forward with in-person delegations. Councillor Richards and Councillor Shortreed.
Just to clarify, we wouldn't be stopping them from coming via Zoom. It's just and
No,
or.
if they wish to, to present via Zoom, I mean, we still have those capabilities. I don't see us, it's the same as committees. If we can offer that choice to a committee, we should be able to offer that choice. But some people want to have that personal interaction with council, especially when they're asking for something. That would be my thought. Councillor Shortreed.
I'm okay with it. I think now we're at the point we're all out doing our day-to-day stuff, grocery shopping, we're next to people. I think we're at the point that we can start doing that, definitely.
Deputy Mayor Dayu.
I agree. I'm certainly ready to go back to in-person delegation. I am also keen to go back at the right moment and hopefully sooner rather than later to in-person public meetings in the same spirit as what you've said. It's more impactful when you've got a face-to-face conversation with someone who's requesting something that's important to them. It's also really impactful to have 20 people scowling at us or 20 people really happy with what we're deciding. It is the right of someone participating in the democratic process to scowl and try to sway last minute with
Via
a facial
said scowl.
via said scowl. The importance of the issue that is being discussed, and in a way, and unintentionally, when we don't have that interaction, we get into a little comfort bubble that I don't think we should have. I think we should have the cheers and the scowls equally. So my grand hope is to figure out what would trigger us to be able to go back, because I do think that is a very important goal to reach.
Keep in mind that we do have some limitations here. Now, we don't have the same space that we had for public participation, given the switch to offering both live streaming, the choice for people to Zoom in. There's a barrier between the screen that we watch and the desk there that presentations are made from. We don't have the same amount of space, nor am I sure that that we're ready to fill the room. I mean, I can remember a number of years ago that there were, I don't know how many chairs, but the whole back section, from where the desk is back was filled with chairs. And there were meetings where the sidelines were filled with chairs. And I don't think we're quite ready for that. I do hear what you're saying, that, when something contentious is going on, or we're making a serious change that, has not been contemplated by the public, and they're just ticked off about it, and they want to be here. We have to remember that they're not, unless they're a delegation, they can't speak, but they can still let us know by their very presence. People, and on the other side of things, if people feel strongly enough, they can ask to be a delegation. Mind you, the timing of something appearing on the agenda and the ability for them to say, I don't like that and I want to go to the meeting and be a delegation, doesn't work. So, we need to think about all of that. I'd like to hear you. Not sure we're ready for full on yet. Let's do things one step at a time. We're dealing with staff comfort levels as well. I think we need to be somewhat sensitive to that while moving forward with the reality of what the rest of the world is doing and what the world expects. We're here to serve the public, and we can't shut them out either. Go ahead.
So then, to reiterate, I'm not asking for that change to be made now, but for us to start to consider what are the triggers to work towards bringing that back. And are there ways that we can overcome the issue of the fact that our technology is changing, or, to start to think about how do we get there? Because it won't be exactly the way it was before, granted, fine. So what changes can we make? And not immediately, and staff comfort is of course incredibly important. We've got perhaps competing priorities of making people safe, and also making people know that they are part of the democratic process. So balancing them is something I think we just have to continue to work towards.
I think our clerk might have a comment to make. No? Oh, I thought that was your hand working its way up. Comments from the CAO?
I guess a thank you for the offer to let us sort of think about and work towards that, because there are obviously some logistical things we would have to think about and talk to IT about and sort through and plan. So if that's something we can work towards, then we can certainly get that the thought and bring it back.
Okay. So in the meantime, can we go forward and agree to allow in-person delegations should that request be made? Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder to that effect? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved that council directs in-person delegations may resume immediately, and further electronic participation for delegations continue to be permitted if requested.
All in favor? That's carried. Mr. O'Callaghan. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
So your item for discussion is the request for extension of the approval of the plan of subdivision for the Kinesis River subdivision.
Yes, that is correct. So the property owner has requested a 2-year extension to this draft approval. They have been working towards finalizing the conditions attached to it, but as they've outlined in their letter, they've run into some delays with servicing some of the lots. So I'm in support of granting that 2-year extension. I'm happy to answer any questions if council has any.
Questions? Concerns? I'm giving everybody a chance first because I got some concerns. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering if there is anything that we can do for this project to move forward.
Yes,
At all.
there is. not
Great.
approve a 2-year extension. I mean, you can tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, but I have an issue with this. This has been extended and extended and extended for a decade. And I've got a problem with that, given the absolute total urgent need for housing. And I know that this does not offer affordable housing, but we need housing of every sort, you know, that all of the municipalities are having issues hiring professional people who are just looking for a lot of place. This is the one subdivision that I'm aware of in Algonquin Highlands that is kind of ready to go. And their rationale is for fiber installation. And that is something that if my information is correct, Bell is going to be coming to the county and offering something rather extraordinary with respect to installation of fiber throughout the county in the very near future. And I don't see other development not proceeding based on fiber and the level of service. I honestly, I think that this, I'm willing to give, if I had my way, I would say no. But I think that the timing is such that we do need to give them some extension. But I am not in favor of 2 years. That has just gone on for far too long. We have had more meetings about this subdivision and the number of lots there and how the configuration would take place and all kinds of extensions. And I think this is just a bit over the top. Madam CAO.
I just have a question of Sean, because I can't remember, but I'm almost certain of the answer is servicing obviously is part of the condition for the lot creation, but not for part of the servicing isn't for internet. Am I correct on that?
I believe you are. I'd have to double check the subdivision agreement to confirm, but from just going off memory, I don't believe that was specifically included.
And there are a variety of ways to access service at different levels. It's not that there wouldn't be any service there. And we all want high speed, but if we all waited until, 2025 and put everything on hold until then, we'd be in a deeper fix than we are now when it comes to housing. Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Does council have the authority to say no for no reason other than we want to see something happen here and it's time to rip off the Band-Aid? Or does planning protocol sort of say that this is like something that we need to do and it's just part of that process? Because we do have a housing crisis in Ontario. We have an affordable housing crisis in Ontario. And while I know the lower tier doesn't have much, if anything, to say at all about housing, I just wonder if there is any scope there for us to do something in response to that crisis, if in fact this doesn't appear to be going anywhere. I mean, could you outline almost the extremes of our options?
Certainly. So the county is the approval authority for this application. So the request has to start at the township level and the decision of council will be forwarded to the applicant and to the county. So should council not be in support of the extension, the county could override that and still grant the extension. If the extension is not granted and the conditions are not fulfilled within that time frame, then the draft approval would lapse. So then the subdivision would essentially cease to exist.
We don't want that to happen, that's for sure. But has he not met all the conditions of the draft approval?
That's what this request is for. So they have more time to fulfill all those conditions. So there are.
But their only condition that they're saying is still outstanding is this one about that, is from what I read, was for installation of internet.
I believe there are some other more minor conditions that are outstanding on the file. The Ministry of Environment still has to final a few items to do with the subdivision. So I think they've run into some delays through that as well. So they are they are progressing through the file. I have been in somewhat regular contact with the developer. It's just unfortunately, there are delays with the development of this size.
Councillor Berry.
Can we meet in the middle? Can we extend one year? And if they want to come back in December, then maybe the pressure of 1 year will do the same thing.
I believe that's what we said, yes, last year and the year before that. Quite sincerely. I am tempted to say no. It is the county's decision, but what can we do to bring more housing to Algonquin Highlands?
Well, that's my concern, and why, like 2 years, I can't live with. And I would like, could we ask for 6 months
Yeah.
extension?
Yeah.
So yes, we could change the timeframe. But again, ultimately it'd be up to the county to determine what that is. In my discussions with the applicant, they're asking for the 2 years, I think, just so they don't have to come back next year, should it not be completed. They are motivated in my discussions with them to have this all finalized. But they just keep running into delays.
I just would like to add to the motivation. And I don't have any issue with them coming back. I mean, given the urgent need for housing at all levels. You know, if they have to come back in 6 months and say specifically, look, we have, you know, the MOE has not assisted us in this regard, and we just cannot meet the, you know, the terms of our agreement yet. Then, okay, you know, I mean, we'd have to allow another extension, but you know, I just would like to see this, you know, move forward. It's something that's just been dragging on too long, and 2 years just, you know, I mean, they say they're motivated, but 2 years is a long time. And, you know, and it's going to be, if they were able to start developing those lots right now, it would probably be 2 years before there was a house in place, or could be. Go ahead, Councillor Richards.
Yeah, I think, you know, my problem is the fact that they're giving Bell as the reason, because for 21 lots for Bell for 5 to put in compared to all the other surrounding homes where they would be wanting to put in 5. I can't imagine that they would only put in 5 for 21 units. It would have to be the entire area, which I know would be very welcome to the neighborhood. But I wouldn't, you know, like to see 5 slow down development of a subdivision. But it sounds to me like what you're saying is that approve it or deny it, the county can override us anyway, and it's really not going to change the final outcome of when these units are built.
The county does consider the comments and the perspective of the municipality. I mean, it doesn't always work out that, you know, that they're exactly the same, but they won't just discount the fact that that, you know, we're looking at a shorter time period.
Yeah, but ultimately, the developer is choosing when he starts construction. He may be delayed by circumstances beyond his control because of MOE and some of the complications that arise just from the area he's building. But ultimately, he's the one deciding when these units are built.
I'm sorry?
He's the one that's deciding when these units actually get built. It's his land, it's his development, right? So I don't know if there is anything that we can do to assist or help speed this up at all.
Is it the developer's plan to build the houses themselves, or are they just getting ready to sell the lots?
I'm not sure what the intent is there, unfortunately.
This might be a combination of both. Go ahead.
If council decides that, you know, 6 months or not at all, but it suggests that it's 6 months, could the developer in the 6 months, if they can't meet, because it does sound like they're under at the will of other agencies, perhaps they come back in person and tell council what's happening, rather than just sending a letter, because there is a lot of questions that council has. and concerns. So perhaps if there is a next time, they come and present and say, this is why.
She's done that in the past. Yeah, well, I'd like to recommend 6 months. I wouldn't want to say not, deny it completely, because I certainly don't want, the subdivision after all of this work to cease to exist and that somebody to have to start all over again. That's not my intention. I just want to give them a little bit of a boost. Can we live with 6 months? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder to that effect? Councillor Short Reed, Deputy Mayor Dayu. Do you know when this will go to the land division? Is that at their next meeting?
I'm not sure if it'll be on the next one, or the one after that, but they'll receive our comments right after this meeting.
I understand the land division is about to have a barn burner of a meeting, at their next meeting.
I'll be sure to tune in.
Exciting times. Go ahead.
Moved by Councillor Short Reed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu, be it resolved, Council receives report PL 122 prepared by Sean O'Callaghan and dated January 19th, 2023, regarding draft plan of subdivision 46T91001 on lands located at part of lot 17, concession 9 and 10, geographic township of Stanhope, submitted by Greg Bishop Surveying and Consulting Limited. And further, that council recommends approval of a 6-month time extension for draft approved plan of subdivision file number 46T91001.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Okay, next on the agenda is our external board meetings. There may not be a lot to report or anything at all in some of these cases, but we'll go through the list. Anything on the community partnership? They haven't had any meetings, nothing going on at all. Okay. Dorset Health Hub. And no.
Sorry, I was absent for that.
No update or information that you can give us. Okay. It might help if you do have to, any one of us have to miss a meeting for us to reach out to, to see if there is anything, of note that we need to hear or know.
Most of these committees have minutes.
Yes and no.
Okay.
It's not consistent. I can't give you a consistent yes to them all. Has the Muskoka Watershed Council met?
Tomorrow is the first meeting.
Well, we look forward to your next report, then.
And the Upper Trent, I haven't heard from them yet, thanks.
And we did advise them of the of Councillor Richard's appointment. Yep. Okay. Fair enough. I think that we are going to need to change the reporting structure for the next item. That would be the library board. We'll turn over to Deputy Mayor Dayu, as she's now one of our newly appointed members of the library board, and sadly ended up having to miss their first meeting there. But you might have something that you'd like to say about the library board.
I don't, but as soon as we have something coming from them, because they're very consistent, I find in communications, I'll be very happy to report back.
They are very consistent. I mean, there's definitely a group that have regular minutes. They do an absolutely wonderful Friday update every week. They tell us what's been going on and all the news. I did have an inquiry from the CEO of the library, kind of wondering, if they run into difficulties with the lockers at the Dorset at Robinson's, that, they might reach out looking for some assistance in that regard. But given that it may be not too long a time that it's closed, that might not be a problem. The lockers are still there. People have access to them, and hopefully there won't be any difficulties there. Has there been any action or meeting of the Community Climate Action Plan Advisory Group?
No, that group was mandated for 4 meetings, and those 4 meetings have happened. So Corey is working on, the draft plan, and we'll be looking at how to bring community members back into that fold in a new iteration later on. But as, if I understand correctly, the 4 meetings that were mandated for that group have happened. But perhaps. you
Oh,
would
you're
allow
not,
me to
you're,
check
you're
that.
saying 4 meetings in total
In
or 4
total.
meetings a year?
No, in total. In order to get the community action plan drafted and populated, and now it's about what's next. But if you wouldn't mind, I will confirm that before you
Okay.
quote me in any way, although I know I'm quoted because we're on live camera and it's all recorded forever.
Okay. And I see I managed to skip a number of things here. With respect to the community safety and well-being plan update, the plan itself is done. I have just recently submitted a welcome and introduction to the plan. It's going to be made public. The public is urged to read it, understand it, see where they might become involved, because it's kind of it is a group hug. It's one of those things where there is a way for everybody to be involved in this. And so I just urge everyone to read it, see if you can understand it, and if you have any questions, to talk to our coordinator, Sue Tiffin. With respect to the Eastern Ontario Regional Network, work is still continuing, with respect to the cell gap project and installations. They're moving ahead at a reasonable speed. There have been some challenges with consultation with Indigenous groups, but the process is in place. It seems to be working. It takes some time to do that. So there has been some delay associated with that. The one big change with respect to EORN is, while that project will continue, their model is going to change somewhat, and they're moving into other areas, and that is in particular the oversight of the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, what they're calling the 7 and 7 plan, and it's a housing plan to build 7,000 units in Eastern Ontario in 7 years, and they're in the process of promoting that with both the federal and provincial governments. There's going to be a main stage presentation made at Roma about the project. It's received really good reviews, and it's been well received by the federal government, who are actually suggesting that they're willing to provide funding for any studies, marketing, further work that needs to be done before it's actually given approval. The provincial government seems to be a little more positive in their approach to it, but they seem to be they're saying this sounds good, but they're certainly a long way from agreeing to be a 1/3 partner in that particular project. I have been asked to put my name forward to sit on the EORN board, and I'm going to be doing that because I just see that when it comes to housing and the urgent need for housing, if there's a huge emphasis on housing coming from the Wardens Caucus and EORN, that I just like to be able to, bring more information, be a better conduit of information between those groups. So, I'll come back to you and let you know how that makes. The appointments to the EORN board happen in March. So I'll let you know in March how that goes. So the only other thing is the Muskoka River Watershed Communications Committee. Anything there? Okay. So no resolution required for that. Under general business, there is a request for us to put a name forward to the Kawartha Halliburton Source Protection Authority. Now, I did previously sit on that board, but I'm looking to see if anyone is interested in either or both of the planning committee and or the working group. We don't have to be involved, but sometimes it's a good piece. It's not as relative to us because we don't have municipal water sources. There are other issues that they deal with, like, for instance, agricultural areas next to, large bodies of water. But we don't, I mean, there was a lot of the conversation that really did not relate to Algonquin Highlands. But it is interesting work. And there definitely affects to the county overall. There are other county representation on that. So if someone is interested in being on that group, please think about it. Say so. We don't have to necessarily, I think they are looking for appointments to be done fairly quickly, but we don't have to submit a name now. Do we?
First meeting for the first piece of correspondence is March 23rd. And the second piece of correspondence, that is just if anyone's interested in the nomination on that committee. And they're looking for that by January 31st.
I'm not seeing a whole lot of people jumping up and down. So no resolutions required. All right, is there any notice of motion? Hearing none. Under correspondence, was there any support for any of the correspondence? Deputy Mayor Dayu.
The all-important CT scan.
Oh. I was looking at my copy. My apologies. So the next item on the agenda is the letter from Mr. Rutter requesting support, that I write a letter of support in efforts to bring a CT scan to the county. I believe that there's a number of fundraising issues that are going on. There's some discussion taking place at the county level about the possibility of getting a CT scan. There needs to be some discussion about the location and staffing and, a continued funding for that, as opposed to just buying the CT scan. But I think, we all realize that a lot of the work that that our paramedics do are taking patients for CT scans and taking astronomical amounts of time and reducing the availability of paramedics in the county. That, there's times when there's like one vehicle in the entire county, and there have actually been times when there are none. Because, what will happen is that they take a patient to Peterborough or even Toronto, they have to wait for hours and hours and hours. And, they might have to leave the patient there. And then when they're out of the area, they get a call from that outside area that they have to respond to. They can't get back. So having a CT scan here would make a huge difference in our ability to provide paramedic services and as well, it turns out that when it comes to recruiting physicians, a lot of the younger physicians that we're trying to recruit, they don't want to come someplace where there isn't that as a standard piece of equipment that they have access to. So it would help us in our recruiting efforts as well. So I don't think it's rocket science that we would all agree to a letter of support. So could I have a mover and a seconder to move that? Councillor Barry, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Excuse me.
Be it resolved that council authorizes the mayor to sign a letter of support for the application being submitted by the Haliburton Highlands Health Services for a CT scan machine to be located at the Haliburton Hospital facility.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And, maybe the sooner that we can get that out, the better. Just as one other item of information, all 4 mayors have been asked to participate in a strategic planning process for HHS. And it's starting today, 4 o'clock. So, hopefully, we'll help them in the development of their own strategic plan. And during that process, that will, result in better communications and a better working relationship between particularly the county and HHS. So That's kind of exciting. I'm looking forward to that. All right, now to correspondence. Any comment or support for correspondence? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the correspondence? Councillor Richards, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Richards, second by Councillor Shurry. Be it resolved, Council receives the January 19th, 2023 correspondence listing for information.
All in favor? That's carried. And second to last, bylaws. First is the bylaw to authorize, oh, you put them all together, right? So we have, could I have a mover and a seconder to put the bylaws forward? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, the following bylaws be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with a corporate seal affixed. Bylaw 2022-01 to authorize borrowing to meet 2023 expenditures. Bylaw 2023-02 to provide for an interim tax levy and provide for interest and penalty to be applied on taxes. Bylaw 2023-03 to adopt a corporate health and safety policy.
All in favor? That's carried. Could I have a mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw? Councillor Berry, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Councillor Richards. Be resolved that bylaw 2023-04 to confirm the proceedings of council be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with a corporate seal affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. And finally, could I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Berry, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved that the council meeting be adjourned at 2:13 PM.
All in favor? That's carried. It's rare that somebody votes against adjourning.